Chapter 981 Flawless Fakesu. On the day that heavenly Netherfrost Lake was open, the entire Divine Ice Phoenix Sect seemed to have frozen. The atmosphere was unprecedentedly somber and serious. It was because today was the day that the great Realm King would select her direct disciple. Once they became the Realm King's direct disciple, not only would their position rise sharply, their cultivation would also soar rapidly. Moreover, they would even receive a drop of pure Ice Phoenix origin blood. It was the greatest honor within the Snow Song realm. In the high skies of the Ice Phoenix realm's northernmost area, an ice boat pierced through the cold wind and traveled at an extremely fast speed. Huanzhi and Mu Xiaolan stood upright at the two sides of the boat while Mu Bingyun, whose clothes fluttered in the wind, stood in front. This place was already not too far from the heavenly Netherfrost Lake. I really didn't think that even I would get to enter the heavenly Netherfrost Lake. These few days felt like a dream to me. I was scared that I'd suddenly wake up from it when I was in the cultivation room. Even though many days had passed, Mu Xiaolan was still drowned within intense excitement and emotions. The other Ice Phoenix disciples probably felt the same. After all, the ones who were able to enter the heavenly Netherfrost Lake had all been Divine Hall disciples, moreover, the most excellent ones amongst them. Also, not only can we meet the senior brothers and sisters as well as the various palace masters and elders also. Mu Xiaolan faintly gulped with 30% expectation and 70% nervousness. I'll be able to see the great Realm King again. Ow, I'm so nervous. What's there to be nervous of? It's not like she'll choose you as her direct disciple. She probably wouldn't even spare you a glance. Huanzhi mercilessly struck her down with his mouth. HMPH, my Xiaolan spoke angrily. I haven't sorted it out with you for lying to me before, yet you actually still dare make fun of me. How did I lie to you? Huanzhi rolled his eyes. You're still not admitting it. Mu Xiaolan looked at him with disdain. Master, he actually lied to me the other day, saying that it was Senior Sister Fakesu who came to deliver the amorous grass dew for us. HMPH, you don't even know how to lie properly. Every year, only new disciples of the Divine Hall ever deliver the amorous frost dew. Such an amazing person like Senior Sister Fakesu, as well as taking account of her personality, how could she do such a thing? All you know is to make trouble and trick me every day. It's up to you if you want to believe it or not. Huanzhi put his hand behind the back of his head, disinclined to refute. Fakesu, Mu Bingyun looked to the side. Huanzhi, you shouldn't have met Fakesu before. How did you know it's her? She told me herself. Facing Mu Bingyun, Huanzhi's expression was sincere. I was also very surprised that the rumored greatest disciple of the entire sect would personally come to deliver the amorous frost dew. She told you that she's Mu Fakesu with her own words. Mu Bingyun's eyes were like a serene cloud, a hint of bafflement coming through the depth of her gaze. Well, that's not it either. She might have been trying to tease me at first and told me another name. However, she actually knew of the matter of me and Mu Yizhu. And because of some other reasons, I was able to guess that it was very likely that she is the Mu Fakesu that Mu Hanyi adores. When I spoke it out, she also admitted it. The honest Huanzhi narrated in detail. Mu Bingyun, Senior Sister Fakesu teasing you. Mu Xiaolan let out a PFFB sound of laughter, then her expression became angry again. It's fine if you lie to me, but you even dare deceive Master. That's too much, Huanzhi shrugged, not inclined to bother with her as he continued. Oh right, Palace Master. The reason why she came to deliver the amorous grass dew was probably out of convenience, as her main goal was to meet you. After I told her that you weren't in the palace for those few days, I wonder if she ever found you later. Meet me? Mu Bingyun once again looked over at him. She also said that herself, Huanzhi pondered. She said she was also coming to see someone as she was delivering the amorous grass dew. It can't be Senior Sister Xiaolan, let alone me. So it could only be Palace Master. Seeing the rather strange expression on Mu Bingyun, he hesitated a little as he spoke meekly. It can't be that. She was really there to see Senior Sister Xiaolan, was she? But I remembered that Senior Sister Xiaolan isn't well acquainted with her. Mu Bingyun turned her gaze back, as some irregular fluctuations emerged from her eyes. She then spoke softly. In 100 breaths, we'll arrive at the heavenly Netherfrost Lake. Take care to channel profound energy to defend against the cold. Just as Mu Bingyun's voice subsided, the temperature of the already chilly world suddenly dropped sharply. The further they forged ahead, the more bone-chillingly cold it became. The entire world also became even more still and silent, as though even sound was frozen. The area where heavenly Netherfrost Lake was located was the coldest place in the entire Snow Song realm. It is the first time ever in the history of the Snow Song realm that the heavenly Netherfrost Lake has been publicly opened to such a degree. Not only will the great realm king come personally, the 72 divine hall elders, 36 palace masters, the freezing snow main hall master, as well as the chief deacon. All of the higher-ups in the Divine Ice Phoenix Sect have come. Of the young generation, there are at most 2,000 divine hall disciples. The 100 outstanding disciples chosen by each Ice Phoenix Palace total 3,500 disciples. This is 5,500 disciples added up altogether. Such an amount is unprecedented, and these 5,500 disciples that are entering the heavenly Netherfrost Lake will dictate our Snow Song realm's future. Mu Bingyun's words were not exaggerated at all. This was because Divine Ice Phoenix Sect was the ruler of the Snow Song realm, and Divine Ice Phoenix Sect's most outstanding young generation would undoubtedly become rulers of the future Snow Song realm. If it weren't for the fact that the 36th Ice Phoenix Palace only had an awkward 2 disciples, the amount would have reached 5,600. In other words, Yuanqi, who had just come to the Snow Song realm, was now about to see the highest echelons of Divine Ice Phoenix Sect, as well as all the highest-level disciples. Just based on this, Yuanqi could be said to have no predecessor. Today's event is no small matter. The severity of its significance is incalculable. Thus, once you enter the heavenly Netherfrost Lake, you must not step out of line. Mu Bingyun's words were evidently said to Yuanqi. She had never reproached him for his previous repeated troubles, but there could not be any errors within the heavenly Netherfrost Lake gathering. She had to give Yuanqi a serious warning. Xiaolan, Yuanqi, when you enter the heavenly Netherfrost Lake, you too must follow me closely. You must agree to everything I say and may not say anything or do anything different. You must comply with every one of my orders. Mu Bingyun rarely revealed an extremely solemn expression. As though she still wasn't assured due to Yuanqi's trouble-making abilities, she turned to Yuanqi and repeatedly warned again. Yuanqi, your temperament is much too casual. Even though this isn't necessarily a bad thing, today is far from ordinary and you must not overstep any bounds. Especially because the sect master's temperament is extreme. For such a grand occasion, if you anger her, the consequences would be unthinkable. Forget about me, even if all 72 elders and 36 palace masters gathered all their power, they would not be able to stop her. You must be careful. Yes, I will firmly follow behind Palace Master. I will do anything Palace Master tells me to and not do whatever Palace Master doesn't want me to do, Yuanqi obediently promised. At the same time, he said inwardly, how could I possibly stir up any trouble this time? Everyone who is able to enter the heavenly Netherfrost Lake today is a big boss. Out of everyone here, my strength is number 2 from the bottom. Aside from one person, I simply can't afford to offend anyone else. Relying on you being beside me in private to call out Mu Yizhu is one thing, but there are all sorts of big bosses within the heavenly Netherfrost Lake. Even the great realm king herself has personally come. It's not like I'm tired of living or anything. The number 1 from the bottom was Mu Xiaolan. This meant that the sister relationship between the great realm king and Mu Bingyun was deep. In reality, the 36th Ice Phoenix Palace was long gone and only existed in name. However, during these 1,000 years, not only had the 36th Palace continued all this while, it had never been treated differently by the other Ice Phoenix Palaces. This had astonishingly even allowed Yuanqi and Mu Xiaolan to enter the heavenly Netherfrost Lake. The atmosphere became more and more cold. Mu Xiaolan had already begun spreading her profound energy to protect herself. Her body had also somewhat shrunk a bit. The first time she heard Mu Bingyun say such serious words to Yuanqi finally caused her to feel that it was a bit more balanced. When she peeked at Yuanqi, she discovered that his face was as normal as ever beneath the frigid wind, and he totally had not released profound energy to protect himself. She blurted out, "Hey, little junior brother, are you not cold?" "Cold?" Yuanqi looked at Mu Xiaolan and then immediately nodded straightly. "It is a bit cold." "HMPH, you sure enjoy acting tough. Let's see how long you can last." Mu Xiaolan grumbled as she added another layer of profound energy on her body. "When you see the Great Realm King later, it's best if you keep your head low. You cannot stare randomly. The Great Realm King enjoys being alone. Aside from Master, she would never be willing to see anyone, even if it is an elder or palace master, unless it is an especially important matter." Otherwise, it's normal to never see her more than once every 100 years. You being able to follow Master means that you seriously got some good luck. You mustn't. Achoo! Due to the sudden arrival of a cold wind, Mu Xiaolan was caught by surprise by the cold and sneezed. She instantly flushed red all the way to her neck and turned her face around, no longer willing to look at Yuanqi. "Oh, even an Ice Phoenix Palace disciple would sneeze," Yuanqi said insensibly, coupled with a surprised enough expression. "W said that we can't sneeze?" Mu Xiaolan resentfully retorted as her face became even redder. Mu Xiaolan was born in an ice world and had cultivated ice-profound arts since birth. Adding her high innate talent into the mix obviously meant that she was not affected by any ordinary coldness. But the heavenly Netherfrost Lake region was just too cold. It was not limited to the Snow Song realm. Saying that it was the coldest place in the entire God realm was hardly going overboard. "We're here." The speed of the ice boat now slowed, but the severity of the cold air had already reached an extremely cruel degree. For profound practitioners below the divine way, even if it was a monarch, it would feel like they had fallen into hell. Even if they did their best, they wouldn't be able to move a single step. Although Mu Bingyun did not glance back, she still sensed that Yun Qi's aura was as steady as usual, with not the slightest bit of profound energy on his body. Deep astonishment flashed past her eyes, but she did not say a single word as she controlled the ice boat so that it could descend. Yun Qi's gaze was firmly fixed to his front. There was surprisingly a humongous azure barrier up ahead. Ice beams circulated atop the barrier like countless numbers of flickering stars. "The heavenly Netherfrost Lake is just within that barrier," Mu Bingyun said softly. "It seems that we have come a bit early." The ice boat sped up again. What was originally an azure barrier that was in the distance suddenly appeared close at hand in a few breaths. There was a field of emptiness before the barrier. Whether it was members of the Divine Hall or Ice Phoenix Palace, neither had arrived yet. "Oh, we're actually the first to arrive?" Yuanqi hollered. It was no wonder either. Their 36th palace only had him and Mu Xiaolan, so they simply didn't need to make any preparations. "We can't say that we're the first," Mu Bingyun suddenly said. At the same time Mu Bingyun said that, Yuanqi had already shockingly seen a lone snow-white figure standing amidst the world of ice and snow before the barrier. It was the silhouette of a woman. She wore clothes that were a pure white and was utterly silent. Whether it was her aura or figure, both had completely blended in with the world of ice and snow. Yuanqi was dazzled the instant he saw her. It was as though he was looking at a proud, lone, and pure ice lotus that within a world of ice and snow. This person, such a pure icy snow aura, she's human. Or was she an ice fairy birthed within this place of extreme cold? As Yuanqi exclaimed inwardly, the ice boat soundlessly landed. It was also at this time that the woman quietly standing within the snow turned around. She had a beautiful complexion that was as pure and lustrous as icy snow. Beautiful enough to make one hold their breath and cold enough to make one's soul shiver. In fact, her eyes were extremely clear, yet resembled a bone-piercingly cold pond. Just being looked upon by them was enough to make one's soul freeze. "Disciple Mu Feixu greets Palace Master Bingyun." She executed a full salute. It was just that there was no emotion whatsoever on her flawless face that had not a single speck of dust. Her voice was as icy as a cold lake. Each and every one of her words were cold and detached, without the slightest bit of warmth or feeling. Atop her left shoulder was a beautiful twinkling blue light from an ice phoenix engraved jade, proof of her exalted Divine Hall disciple status. "Ah, see, Senior Sister Feixu," Mu Xiaolan quietly uttered in alarm as she stood in place. She was so nervous she didn't even dare to say anything else. She didn't expect that the first person they would see after arriving would actually be Mu Feixu, the disciple with the highest innate talent within the sect, the one with the most respected status, whose accomplishments were extremely likely to be on par with her master. Yuanqi, however, was instantly stunned. Mu Feixu, she's Mu Feixu. WWA. If she's Mu Feixu, TT the one who came to deliver the amorous frost due 4 days ago, the big breast. Ah no. Who was the senior sister that was as alluring as a demoness? Chapter 982, Great Occasion. As Yuanqi was still stunned, a frosty wind brushed past, and yet another silhouette fell from the sky. This one was male and had the noble engraved jade emblem that marked his status of a Divine Hall disciple on his shoulder. His white clothes fluttered about in the wind, making him look especially handsome and elegant as he exuded a transcendent, noble, and graceful aura. It's senior brother Hanny, Mu Xiaolan involuntarily cried out. The divine halls? Ah, no. It was only the two most outstanding disciples within the entire sect and even the entire Snow Song realm that were able to become the realm king's direct inheriting disciple, who had coincidentally arrived the earliest. Being able to encounter both individuals when they had even yet to enter the heavenly Netherfrost Lake was incredibly lucky. Mu Hanny floated down and then respectfully bowed toward Mu Bingyun. Disciple Mu Hanny gives his regards to Palace Master Bingyun. I've heard that Palace Master Bingyun's celestial body is getting better with each passing day. Hanny is overjoyed. Mu Bingyun slightly nodded. Today's results will determine the road you walk for the rest of your life. Do not get careless. Yes, Mu Hanny seriously replied. Then he straightened up and turned to Mu Feixu, who was still as water. Joy was within his warm smile as he said, Junior Sister Feixu, you've arrived so early. Did you not come with Great Elder and the others? Didn't senior brother Hanny come really early too? Mu Feixu's voice was as cold as ice. Even though she was answering Mu Hanny, her gaze didn't falter at all when faced with his approach. My heart was restless the entire night when I thought about today, so I came this early hoping that the cold wind here would help me calm down a bit. It seems like my cultivation still isn't enough. If I am fortunate enough to be able to become the sect master's direct disciple, then I will have had my life's wish granted. If I am defeated by Junior Sister Feixu, however, I also will not feel the slightest bit unwilling or regretful. I might even be really happy instead. Mu Hanny sighed lightly, his words calm and sincere as he looked at Mu Feixu the entire time, his eyes not shifting away at all. Even though it was cold enough to penetrate the heart, what released this cold intent was actually the excessively beautiful landscape. If he was able to obtain even the slightest smile from her, he would probably be delighted to freeze here for all eternity. What answered him was actually Mu Feixu's silence. Her icy eyes were gently closed as she returned to her previous silence, no longer paying him any heed. It was as though she didn't hear what he had just said earlier. In fact, it didn't seem like she had even looked at him even once since the beginning. Mu Hanny's smile persisted on his face, but an additional melancholy surfaced between his brows, even though he had long since become used to being treated like this by Mu Feixu. In Divine Ice Phoenix Sect, there were countless girls who adored him. As long as he was interested, they would even be willing to become his concubines or maid servants. However, the only person his heart pined for treated him like nothing. She treated everyone like that. She was a girl born with the Ice Phoenix bloodline. It was as though her heart and soul had been sealed by the Ice Phoenix power since birth and would never thaw. On the other hand, a man would never become like that. This was perhaps related to the differences in the yin and yangs of both sexes. At the side, Huanzhi was the same as Mu Hanny. His gaze had been firmly fixed on Mu Feixu. As he looked, he gradually became thoroughly stupefied. Even though Mu Feixu was extremely beautiful and was not inferior to Mu Bingyun, she still wasn't as fantastically beautiful as the one who called herself Mu Xuanian. Nor was she so devilishly charming that she would make him lose control of himself. He was unable to move his gaze away to the point where became stupefied because she resembled someone. Different from Mu Bingyun's quiet and mild, Mu Feixu was extremely icy and cold, like the first time he had met Chu Yuechen when she repelled others' smiles away just with her aura alone. She had the same soul-freezing gaze and the same otherworldly celestial beauty which seemed to have come from the heavenly palace's cold moon. Noticing that he was staring at Mu Feixu with a stupid look, Mu Xiaolan quickly reached out and waved her hand before him. Hey, hurry up and recover your senses. You looking at her like that is too impolite. Ha ha ha, Mu Hangyi walked over with a chuckle. Junior Sister Feixu is like a humanized goddess. As long as it's the first time they've seen Junior Sister Feixu, all men would have their hearts taken away. Losing their souls is just too common. Senior brother Hanny? Mu Xiaolan quickly saluted nervously. Then she secretly jabbed at Huanzhi's waist several times with her fingers. Even though Mu Hanny said that, everyone in the sect knew that he liked Mu Feixu, and Huanzhi had actually stared like that in front of him. That was just too embarrassing. Huanzhi's expression gradually regained its focus. As he lowered his gaze, he muttered absent-mindedly, "It's not as if she's little fairy." "Ah, what did you say, little fairy?" "What little fairy?" Mu Xiaolan subconsciously asked. "Little fairy is little fairy, the only little fairy in the world, you understand now?" Huanzhi said grudgingly. Mu Xiaolan looked at the suddenly crazy Huanzhi with a slightly blank look, It'd be way weirder if she actually had understood that. Senior brother Hanny, Yuanqi actively spoke to Mu Hanny. I was influenced by my mood a few days ago and even left rather quickly, never getting to properly thank you. Today, I'd like to officially thank Senior Brother Hanny for your assistance that day. Mu Hanny lightly waved hand. We're all in the same sect and it didn't take much effort. You don't need to be this polite. Hee, speaking of which, we're able to meet once again in merely 7 days within such a huge sect like ours. It seems like we really have some fate with each other. Mu Hanny smiled and then lightly patted Yuanqi's shoulder. Junior brother Yuanqi, even though you are from the lower realms and your profound strength is low, you're bound to be extraordinary and shine within the sect if you put in some effort with your unusual innate talent. I believe my eyes. Those words I said last time will still be effective whether or not I become the sect master's direct disciple today. If you have any difficulties that are hard to solve in the future, I will be sure to assist you to the best of my abilities. You must do your best to work hard and not waste your highly unusual innate talent. I will remember Senior Brother Hanny's advice. Yuanqi nodded. Amen. Mu Hanny nodded and then instructed, to you, being able to enter the heavenly Netherfrost Lake is a rare opportunity. You must properly grasp onto it. Since they were extremely close to the heavenly Netherfrost Lake, this area was frighteningly cold. Mu Xiaolan had nearly circulated more than half her profound strength to defend against it. Not long after, a cold wind came from the south as a group of people on an ice boat came over. Ha 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 ha! A burst of extremely candid laughter came from the skies above, greatly dispersing the strong coldness in this area. Amidst the great laughter, a bulky man fell from the sky. The man looked to be already past his prime. His beard was going gray, yet the hair on his head was still pitch black. His face was filled with wrinkles, and his eyes were as bright as a fierce tiger's. His bold laughter and forceful aura seemed to somewhat go against the profound art Divine Ice Phoenix Sect cultivated. When he landed, the other 30 people who accompanied him also landed behind him at the same time, and the engraved jade which signified that they were Divine Hall disciples were shockingly on their shoulders. Great Elder! This time it was Mu Bingyun who executed a salute. Great Elder! Mu Xiaolan also hurriedly dragged Yunhi forward as Mu Hanny also deeply bowed. Only Mu Feixu was still as silent as snow and did not glance anywhere. Great Elder, Yuanqi's gaze quickly sized up this unusually imposing man. He was Divine Ice Phoenix Sect's head elder, and it was actually a man. In Divine Ice Phoenix Sect, the Divine Hall's 72 elders had the same status as the Ice Palace's 36 palace masters. But in terms of strength, the elders somewhat surpassed the palace masters. However, this difference in strength wasn't because of innate talent but age. This was because only those above 10,000 years of age could be considered an elder, and the average age of the palace masters only numbered in the few thousands. The main duty of the Divine Hall's 72 elders was to train the Divine Hall's 2,000 disciples. Each Ice Phoenix Palace Master had 3,000 disciples below them, but in the Divine Hall, each elder had no more than 30 disciples. Divine Ice Phoenix Sect's treatment toward its top disciples could be clearly seen by this fact, and this could be said for any other sect. After all, the present age was shaped by power, and that was hard to change. It had always been the young generation that decided a sect's future. If the young generation was no good, the sect could only decline. Great Elder Mu Huanzhi took large steps forward and said with a booming voice, Bingyun, you've come pretty early, huh? We've just arrived not too long ago, Mu Bingyun replied. Oh, Mu Huanzhi's gaze then landed on Yuanqi. This junior should be that person you brought over from the lower realms. I remember his name was Yuanqi. Ha ha ha, I've heard that this kid was able to beat a freezing snow hall disciple with profound strength at the sovereign profound realm. Quite impressive. Even though Ice Phoenix Palace didn't have that many disciples, each palace still had 3,000. Being able to remember a name wasn't easy. It was just that aside from Mu Xiaolan, the 36th Ice Phoenix Palace only had Yuanqi. Yuanqi quickly replied, I am humbled that the Great Elder actually knows this disciple's name. Mu Huanzhi waved a big hand. Child, your reputation exceeds you of late. After all, Bingyun has only brought you back, after all these years. Being able to defeat one at the Divine Origin realm at the Sovereign Profound realm is also truly impressive. You are worth training, and Bingyun's eyes, well, how could they be bad? When he said the name Yuanqi, the Divine Hall disciples behind him also shifted their gazes toward him. It could be clearly seen that he had become rather famous during this period of time. I thank Great Elder for the praise. Since members of Divine Phoenix Sect cultivate ice-profound arts, the majority of them were quiet and cold. This Mu Huanzhi, however, was a rare oddity. But Bingyun, even though the aptitudes of these two children aren't bad, their cultivation is a bit low. I'm afraid they won't be able to endure the Heavenly Lake's water. Mu Huanzhi's brows furrowed. I agree, Mu Bingyun lightly nodded. But I don't plan on letting them soak in the Heavenly Lake's water. Not only is that not beneficial for them, it will be extremely easy for them to receive injuries. Just the icy cold aura is beneficial enough for them. Ha 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 ha, Mu Huanzhi suddenly laughed loudly. Just look at my brain, I've gone so old I can't even think properly. With you here, aren't I just worrying foolishly? Hanny, today could be said to be an extremely important day for you. Mu Huanzhi then turned to Mu Hanny, his face becoming a bit more solemn. Even though Feixu is my granddaughter, if it's you, I am able to recognize you without feeling bad. In short, try your best. Our sect's future will most likely be shouldered by the two of you. Mu Hanny deeply bowed. This disciple will do his best. Cough, cough, Feixu. Grandfather obviously wants you to become the sect master's direct disciple more, so you have to… Feixu. Mu Feixu continued to walk in the snow, giving Mu Huanzhi a back figure that was becoming more distant. Mu Huanzhi withdrew his half-extended hand and embarrassedly rubbed his nose. He said depressingly, that child's temperament really is becoming more and more severe. If she really becomes like that girl Bingyun who never marries her entire life, sigh, that seriously makes me worry. Mu Bingyun. Mu Huanzhi was older than Mu Bingyun by 6,000 years. Back then, he was also half her master, so he was qualified to call her girl. The time of the heavenly Netherfrost Lake's opening was getting close. Various divine hall elders, disciples, and various ice phoenix palaces had all started arriving in succession. 2,000 divine hall disciples were led by 72 elders. Behind them were the 36 palaces led by each of their palace masters. Even though they had meditated in advance for 7 days, all of the various Ice Phoenix Palace disciples were still unable to contain the excitement on their faces. Today's occasion caused all of the elders, palace masters, and divine hall disciples to be present. Even the most experienced disciple there had never seen such a spectacle. This included the various divine hall disciples as well. Although they were similarly disciples, and there was only one rank of difference between the Divine Hall and Ice Phoenix Palace. It was a difference between the clouds and mud. Of the Ice Phoenix Palace disciples behind the Divine Hall disciples, none were not nervous to the point where they didn't dare breathe forcefully. They lined up in 35 neat groups, and each step was like a nail being hammered to the floor. They didn't even dare to move. At a certain corner, there were only 2 people in the 36th group, making it appear especially conspicuous. Yunqi's eyes shone as he took in his surroundings and felt the auras that were as boundless as a dream, sighing and exclaiming every other second. Mu Xiaolin, however, was especially uncomfortable, her small hand firmly clutching at Yunqi's sleeve all this while. All 36 Ice Phoenix palaces had arrived, and freezing snow halls Mu Fengshu and Mu Sushan had also arrived together. The last Divine Hall Elder came through the skies 15 minutes before the heavenly Netherfrost Lake opened and landed before the various disciples. Or to be more precise, landed right in front of Mu Hanny. This was a rather tall woman with a face that had seen many changes in life and possessed some majesty. Her chilling eyes exuded an imposing air without any change in expression. Her arrival caused the surrounding aura to congeal in one spot. The Divine Hall's 39th Elder, Mu Yunzhi, aside from being the 39th elder, she had a status that the entire sect was aware of. Mu Hanny's direct master. Chapter 983, Snow Song Realm. King being able to enter Ice Phoenix Divine Hall was the ultimate pursuit of the Snow Song Realm's profound practitioners. In the vast Snow Song Realm, Divine Hall disciples numbered a mere 2,000, so it was obvious what kind of honor it was to be able to enter Ice Phoenix Divine Hall. But if one's disciple was especially excellent, then the master would also gain fame as well. This was what happened to Mu Yunzhi. As a Divine Hall Elder, her status in the Snow Song Realm was only below that of the Realm King and above all other beings. The incredibly astonishing innate talent her disciple Mu Hanny exhibited was one of the highest among all disciples. This made her extremely proud of that fact, and this had thus changed her position within the Divine Hall Elders. If Huanzhi was able to become the sect master's direct disciple, however, then as Huanzhi's direct master, her position within Divine Ice Phoenix Sect would obviously not be the same as it was in the past. The sect master's successor was always one who was the direct disciple of the sect master. If Huanzhi were to one day inherit the position and become the new Snow Song Realm king, though that was no small matter. As such, today was not only a day that concerned Huanzhi's fate but hers as well. If the results were different, then the circumstances would also be like the difference between heaven and earth. Master! Huanzhi took a step forward and respectfully saluted. Huanzhi lightly nodded, then looked deeply at Huanzhi for a while, the meaning in her gaze self-evident. But aside from that, she didn't look at any other disciples, nor did she say anything to Huanzhi. She then turned around and joined the lineup of elders. When she looked at the barrier up front, she said quietly, "It should be about time." It was right around this time that the azure barrier covering the heavenly Netherfrost Lake flashed. It was as though blue starlight was being pulled by an invisible force and was being scattered to both sides. "The sect master has arrived!" The low shout heavily impacted the minds of everyone present. The faces of all the elders and palace masters instantly changed to become incomparably solemn, causing every excited Divine Hall and Ice Phoenix Palace disciple to become intensely nervous. A white line slowly shone off the azure barrier, and with the white line at the center, it slowly spread the barrier open. As the place where the Snow Song Realm's cold vein existed, the heavenly Netherfrost Lake was the Snow Song Realm's holy land. In all of the Snow Song Realm, the only person who was able to open the barrier which sealed the heavenly Netherfrost Lake was the Snow Song Realm king. Aside from her, no one had the power or qualifications to do so. Everyone present held their breaths, and Xiaolan's heart had almost stopped due to her nervousness. After the barrier was slowly opened, it was as though another world was awaiting them. Great Elder Huanzhi had on a grave expression. He took a deep breath and then said, "Let's go in. Sect Master is waiting for us inside. Remember, do not act against the rules and regulations." Huanzhi's last words were quite unnecessary. They were about to meet the Snow Song Realm's Supreme Realm King. Even though they were the top of the Snow Song Realm's young generation, they still wouldn't dare to be the least bit rash. The barrier was completely opened, and a streak of pale light was spread like a curtain up ahead. With the elders at the front, everyone slowly walked into the curtain of light. The footsteps of more than 5,000 people were nevertheless neat and orderly, without any excess sound. Huanzhi and Xiaolan was at the very end. Once they entered the curtain of light, what appeared before them was astonishing, a completely different world. Outside was a brilliant white world where cold wind howled through the snow-covered sky, while the world before them was actually as quiet as still water. The air in this place was extremely cold, yet it wasn't as white as the snow-filled sky outside. It was instead a quiet, inconceivable emerald green. Myriad flowers blossomed, emerald grass swayed, and jade trees stood tall. It was as though they had suddenly left the Snow Song Realm that had been covered by snow throughout the ages to another world which possessed all 4 seasons. At the center of this world was a quiet little lake. The lake was 15 kilometers wide, and its boundaries could be seen with a single glance. The lake water was tranquil with not a single ripple, and yet it still sparkled and was unimaginably pure. Just looking at the lake water made everyone distinctly feel as though their eyes and even thoughts were being gently washed, to become extremely clear. Countless azure ice spirits fluttered agilely atop the lake's surface, completely different from the ice spirits Huanzhi had ever seen before. These ice spirits were the size of a fingertip, yet they released an especially intense life and soul aura. These ice spirits, born from the heavenly Netherfrost Lake, definitely weren't bodies of power with inferior consciousness that everyone knew of. Instead, they possessed complete souls. This is the heavenly Netherfrost Lake. Similar to the other disciples who had never seen the heavenly Netherfrost Lake before, Xiaolan stood in a daze, as though she had fallen into a dream world. Huanzhi also fell into a daze. He never expected that the heavenly Netherfrost Lake he imagined to be covered in profound ice would actually be such a wondrous sight. After all, this was where the cold vein resided, and was the coldest place within the Snow Song Realm. The heavenly Netherfrost Lake's lake water is born from the cold vein. Each drop contains an extremely high level of frost power that will never solidify. All the flora here, from the trees to the flowers to perhaps each stalk of grass, possesses an extremely high level of cold energy. Furthermore, the flora here will only grow in the heavenly Netherfrost Lake and are all unique within the entire god realm. A large majority of the top-grade spiritual medicines within the sect come from the ice flowers and grasses here. The amorous frost due all of you received a few days ago came from the amorous grass and amorous flower here. Mu Bingyun said to Yun-Chi and Mu Xiaolan through sound transmission. What pure cold energy can actually become like this? Mu Xiaolan commented absent-mindedly. The cold energy within the heavenly Netherfrost Lake's water contains extremely high-level ice laws. In the domain of water attribute laws, ice attribute laws are the most difficult laws to comprehend, and they are at their peak within the heavenly Netherfrost Lake. As he listened to Mu Bingyun's narration, Yun-Chi suddenly felt a gloomy gaze cast upon him. He shifted his gaze lightning quick and a pair of baleful eyes. First Ice Phoenix Palace's Mu Yizhu. As the head disciple of the first palace, he was obviously qualified to be here. Mu Yizhu didn't expect Yun-Chi's gaze to suddenly shift over and was clearly stunned for a bit. Then, his face went cold. He fiercely glared at Yun-Chi before turning around, giving the heavenly Netherfrost Lake that was up ahead his full attention. All the disciples neatly stood in front of the heavenly Netherfrost Lake with longing gazes, issuing the greatest exclamations of their lives. Even the most talented artists in the world wouldn't be able to portray the marvel before them. Not only was the cold energy in this place inconceivably pure, it caused the ice profound energy in their profound veins to uncontrollably throb. The skies immediately darkened as a world-shaking dragon cry seemed to have come from the highest heavens, resonating through the world. Beneath this dragon cry, however, the surface of the heavenly Netherfrost Lake was still a field of tranquility without the slightest ripple. This dragon cry caused Mu Xiaolan to cry out in surprise. The bodies of all the disciples present intensely shook, and even Yun-Chi's ears started buzzing. What followed this world-shaking dragon cry was the descent of a pressure that covered the skies. In the skies above, an enormous ice-blue silhouette was rapidly approaching. It was astonishingly an enormous ice dragon. Its body was 10 kilometers long, and its tail was more than 15 kilometers long. When it spread its icy wings, it nearly covered the entire horizon. Its entire body was covered in scales that resembled ice crystals, and at the center of every scale was a piercingly cold icicle. The enormous dragon proudly lifted its head, radiating 2 gleams of aurora-like lights from its eyes. It floated 3 kilometers above them, causing the large dragon shadow it cast to cover the entire heavenly Netherfrost Lake. "TT the Saint Dragon?" Mu Xiaolan yelled with a stammer. It wasn't the first time she had seen a sacred dragon, but she had only seen them from a distance of 500 kilometers away. Never in her dreams would she dare think that she would be able to see one this close. Dragons were the rulers of all beasts, and a dragon's pressure was enough to shake the heaven and earth. Even though everyone in the Snow Song realm knew of its existence, being under the dragon might of an enormous frost dragon caused the faces of all disciples, whether they be from the Divine Hall or Ice Phoenix Palace, to turn ashen. Yun-Chi was the only one who didn't know of its existence. Mu Bingyun turned her gaze to him, but the only thing she found there was shock. She then said to him via sound transmission, "This enormous dragon is the sect master's mount, and it has already followed the sect master for 10,000 years. In the Snow Song realm, it is called the Saint Dragon. As the ruler of all beasts, even when they're on the same level, a true dragon's body power and might surpass all other living beings. It was extremely difficult to kill a dragon, and taming a true dragon was more than hundreds of thousands times harder. Beneath the pressure of this enormous frost dragon, even the gazes of the Divine Hall elders trembled as their auras went into slight turmoil. Its strength could very well be imagined, yet it had willingly served the Snow Song Realm King for an entire 10,000 years as a mount. The strength of the Snow Song Realm King was simply unfathomable. With the Divine Hall elders in the lead, everyone deeply saluted at this moment, and it was even the deepest of salutes, a kneeling kowtow. While Yun-Chi was in his daze, an enormous power that came from Mu Bingyun enveloped his body, also making him salute. "We welcome the sect master?" It was a mere 5 words, yet it carried a devout reverence similar to when believers faced what they revered. Not a single trace of profound energy was in the voices of any of the entire sect's strongest elders, palace masters, or its top 5,000 disciples, because they were afraid it might slightly offend or be disrespectful. The heads of everyone present were deeply lowered. Though they were Divine Ice Phoenix Sect's top disciples, not even half of the disciples within the Divine Hall had seen the sect master before. As for Ice Phoenix Palace, none had seen her before. Now that the sect master was close, not a single one dared to lift their head. Only Yuanqi had raised his head and looked up with curiosity. A misty white figure stood above the enormous frost dragon's head. Even though it was 3 kilometers away, this figure seemed to be covered in an odd, icy mist. He was unable to see her face and appearance. Even her silhouette was extremely indistinct. He was only able to catch that she was a misty snow white. She was the Divine Ice Phoenix Sect Master, Snow Song Realm's Realm King. Everyone around him, from the highest Divine Hall elders to the lowest Ice Phoenix disciples, were all kneeling on the ground, their entire bodies motionless, as though they had been frozen in ice. Although Yuanqi had only raised his head slightly, this minute action was especially conspicuous within the crowd of people. Mu Bingyun was startled. An enormous frost power quickly came down, forcibly pressing Yuanqi's down. Yuanqi immediately became apprehensive. He suddenly became obedient and no longer dared to lift his head. Even though Yuanqi had heard about the Snow Song Realm King's absolute authority within the Snow Song Realm more than once, none of his past experiences were as astounding as the scene he saw today. The elders and palace masters, whose statuses were only second to the sect master, actually acted like the lowliest of commoners seeing their monarch before the Snow Song Realm King. Whether it be his own clan, sect, sacred ground, or even the imperial court, Yuanqi had never seen such an extreme degree of reverence in his 2 lifetimes of experience. It was practically unheard of. In fact, in the past Snow Song Realm, even though the Snow Song Realm King was the highest level existence, the combined forces of all the elders had the right and power to interfere with the Realm King's decisions. However, this generation's Snow Song Realm King was just too excessively strong. 4 stages of tribulation lightning, and having reached the realm of Divine Master, this was unprecedented in the history of the Snow Song Realm. No one could go against her, and no one was able to. This then gradually caused everyone to not dare go against her, because those who dared to do so had all died. After all, this was a world where power was king. The former Snow Song Realm Kings weren't able to cover the Snow Song Realm with a single hand, but the current Snow Song Realm King was truly able to do that with just 1 finger. "You may rise." 3 words came down from above like a heavenly edict. It was also now that the heavenly Netherfrost Lake, which remained still when the enormous frost dragon roared, began to continuously ripple outward. This was the voice that came from the Snow Song Realm King, the currently Ice Phoenix Sect Master. The sound of this voice somewhat resembled Mu Bingyun's. When it fell in the ears, it sounded normal and indifferent, but it was as though the depths of everyone's souls had been struck by a firmament-sized hammer, causing them to incessantly shiver. Chapter 984, Battle of Ice Spirits. The Snow Song Realm King atop the enormous frost dragon had no aura and no pressure whatsoever, but Yuanqi clearly felt that his soul had been firmly pressed down by an extremely heavy mountain. Even his willpower and beliefs were trembling lowly. Yuanqi had never felt this way before. This was the highest realm within the divine way. This was the might of the Divine Master realm. When she reached such a realm, she no longer needed to deliberately release her aura. Her mere existence alone was able to make others submit to her amidst their terror and reverence. Yuanqi got up along with everyone else, his heart pounding incessantly. It was the first time he had clearly felt his own smallness. The Snow Song Realm King above him was situated at the peak of the Divine Way, while he was someone who had yet to step into its doorsteps. Although they were both humans, the difference between them was just too large. The total difference between millions of clouds to mud wasn't enough to describe this disparity. If he had stayed in the profound sky continent and the illusory demon realm his entire life, then he would only have lived a life from the bottom of a well. It was just that. Him not being able to see what she looked like was a bit regretful. Great Elder Mu Huanzhi took a step forward. With a raised head, he said solemnly, "Reporting to Sect Master, 72 Divine Hall Elders, 36 Ice Phoenix Palace Masters, Freezing Snow Hall's Main Hall Master and Chief Deacon, the Divine Hall's 2,000 disciples, and Ice Phoenix Palace's 3,500, and 2 disciples have all arrived. We all await Sect Master's orders." "Very good." The oracle-like voice carried a supreme heavenly might as it traveled down. "Our Snow Song Realm's divine vein is in our heavenly Netherfrost Lake. It is our holy land in which only one person is allowed to enter once every 3 years, and this number has never been exceeded. 3 months ago, the voice of eternal heaven clearly told all the realms that something huge is about to occur, and it is extremely possible for it to be close at hand. The words of the Snow Song Realm King were heavy and oppressive to the extreme. Each word ruthlessly nailed itself into the depths of everyone's soul. This voice, that was oppressive to the point where it could make the world tremble, caused Yuanqi's mind to form the image of the face of an extremely ice-cold, heartless woman who possessed a gaze frightening enough to split one's galls. Because of this, the Eternal Heaven Realm did not hesitate to share the power of the Eternal Heaven Pearl to profound practitioners of other realms. The Eternal Heaven Realm has never done this before in its entire history. Since that's the case, then our Snow Song Realm also should not be stingy about the divine power of the heavenly Netherfrost Lake. The amount of benefits you will receive from being able to enter the heavenly Netherfrost Lake today will be up to your own good luck. Huanzhi, arrange it so they can enter the lake. Yes, Huanzhi replied deeply as his entire body shook once his name was called. He then turned around and said gravely, "Everyone here is a cornerstone of our Divine Ice Phoenix Sect's future. The sect master has bestowed a huge favor upon us, allowing you all to enter the heavenly Netherfrost Lake. This is unprecedented good luck. The divine power of the heavenly lake will let you all be born anew and will be extremely beneficial toward your cultivation of the ice profound arts in the future. The Profound God Convention's preliminary selections that will happen inside the Eternal Heaven Pearl are in 2 years. Once you enter, anyone is able to benefit from its exclusive laws of power, and today's Heavenly Lake gathering will allow even more of you to qualify to enter the Eternal Heaven Pearl. Everyone's constitution, innate talent, and comprehension is different. How much you all can gain from today's event will depend on yourselves. Just remember that this kind of opportunity will not happen again in the future." When he finished his serious warning, Huanzhi waved his hand. With the Divine Hall at the front and the Ice Phoenix Palaces behind them, they were uniformly led by their respective elders and palace masters as they flew above the heavenly Netherfrost Lake. The closer they got to the heavenly Netherfrost Lake, the more pure and dense the frost aura became. Xianxia's cultivation was only at the middle stage of the divine origin realm. Aside from Yuanqi, her profound strength was the weakest amongst the bunch, so her resistance against cold energy was naturally also the worst. At this point, she had no choice but to circulate all of her profound energy in order to withstand the cold. However, at the same time, she was also incomparably excited to feel that her circulation of ice profound energy and the speed at which it recovered was several times greater than it was normally. Bingyun brought Yuanqi and Xiaolan to the very end of the procession, but she did not fly the two over the heavenly Netherfrost Lake. She had instead stopped at the lake's edge. "Xiaolan, Yuanqi." Bingyun turned around and looked at Xiaolan and Yuanqi. Of the two, one was using all the profound energy in her body, yet she still shivered from the cold. The other, however, looked calm, as though nothing had happened to him. "Your cultivation levels are too low, so forcibly entering the heavenly Netherfrost Lake would do more harm than good. You two should stay here. The cold energy here is also born from the heavenly Netherfrost Lake. Immersing yourself in it and tempering your body with the cold energy is enough to greatly improve your control of ice profound arts. This will bring great benefits to your cultivation later on." "Yes, master," Xiaolan said without any objections. She was well aware of her own abilities and knew she wasn't strong enough to soak in the heavenly lake's water. Being able to soak in the cold energy here, which contained extremely high ice laws, was already good luck she wouldn't even dare dream about. She quietly sat down. After quickly breathing in lightly, she closed her eyes, not daring to waste any second she spent here. With the heavenly lake's water so close before his eyes, after a bout of hesitation, Yuanqi still voiced out in the end, "Palace Master, I want to try. Remember what you promised me earlier." Bingyun seemed to already know what he was about to say and directly interrupted him with a solemn face. "You will do whatever I tell you to do and are not allowed to do anything I don't want you to do." Yuanqi opened his mouth but could only nod in submission. "Yes." Right when he went to sit beside Xiaolan, Bingyun's sound transmission suddenly sounded beside his ear. "You have a strange constitution. You are able to forcibly cultivate the Ice Phoenix God investiture cannon without needing the Ice Phoenix bloodline. The cold energy here also will not affect you at all, so even though your profound strength is weak, The Heavenly Lake's water should not be able to harm you. However, your reputation has already preceded you. If it is heard that your body at the sovereign profound realm is able to successfully soak in the Heavenly Lake's water, it will surely cause great waves once more. This will certainly bring you no benefits. The sect master and I owe you, so she might pick a day when she will allow you to come alone. Yuanqi lifted his head and looked at Mu Bingyun's back figure, which had not turned around the entire time. His heart warmed, and then he quickly calmed down and closed his eyes. He no longer cared about his surroundings as he began to focus his senses on feeling the pure, cold energy in this area and comprehending the ice laws within. This was the heavenly Netherfrost Lake. With Mu Bingyun at his side, Yuanqi did not need to set up any defenses whatsoever. Soon enough, his consciousness had unwittingly submerged itself, and he had even isolated all external sounds. Mu Bingyun did not enter the heavenly Netherfrost Lake and instead stood guard in front of the duo. At this time, Mu Sushin came over from behind them. His gaze shifted to Yuanqi, and amidst his shock, his footsteps halted before he exclaimed, "In a short 3 months, he has already reached the peak of the sovereign profound realm. Moreover, his profound energy is this stable. Palace Master Bingyun, I seriously don't know how exactly you've taught him to produce such results." Mu Bingyun shook her head. "That has nothing to do with me." "Haha, then this could only mean that this kid is a freak that goes against common sense," Mu Sushin stated. Mu Bingyun gave an incredibly indifferent smile, but did not comment. The other 35 Ice Phoenix palaces had already arrived above the heavenly Netherfrost Lake. At the location of the first palace, Mu Yizhu glanced at Yuanqi, who was sitting at the edge of the lake. After a disdainful mocking smile flashed on his face, he no longer bothered to look at him a second time. Following his palace master's guidance, he then slowly descended, slowly lowering his body down to the heavenly Netherfrost Lake. The instant the tip of his foot touched the heavenly Netherfrost Lake, a current of cold energy instantly burst forth, immediately spreading through every corner of his body. It was as though he had instantly been sealed into the ice hell of legends. The profound energy in his entire body seemed to suddenly boil like fire as it began to quickly circulate. Ripples continuously came from the heavenly Netherfrost Lake, and the dancing ice spirits were scattered into the distance from their shock. Aside from the 36th palace, all the Divine Hall and Ice Phoenix Palace disciples were now submerged into the lake. Terrifying cold energy caused them to instantly drop into an ice prison the instant they entered. The pain was intolerable, but their hearts were excited to the point that they were close to bursting. Each and every one of them immediately mobilized their thoughts and profound energy, trying to contain and guide the cold energy within them. Even though they had just entered, they were able to sense the extremely distinct changes occurring to their bodies and profound veins brought about by the extremely pure cold energy from the heavenly Netherfrost Lake. Although they had long heard about the miraculous heavenly Netherfrost Lake, they were still happy beyond their dreams after experiencing firsthand. In their joy, they gladly endured the pain brought about by the extreme cold. Compared to the Ice Phoenix Palace disciples, the expressions of the Divine Hall disciples were relatively ordinary. There were no changes on the faces and expressions of Mu Hanyi and Mu Feixu, who were the center of attention when they submerged themselves into the lake water. Aside from Mu Bingyun, Yuanqi, and Mu Xiaolan, everyone else had already entered the heavenly lake. However, the various elders and palace masters did not immediately enter the lake to temper their bodies. After waiting a long while, their gazes all turned to Great Elder Mu Huanzhi. The breathing of 39th Elder Mu Yunzhi was somewhat in disarray. Great Elder Mu Huanzhi himself was also burning with anxiety. Then he finally steeled his heart, lifted his head, and said, "Sect Master about the direct disciple." Once these words came out, a majority of the Divine Hall disciples instantly opened their eyes and looked toward Mu Hanyi and Mu Feixu. This king obviously has not forgotten. The Snow Song Realm King's voice came from atop the enormous frost dragon. "Since we have already arrived at the heavenly Netherfrost Lake, then the matter of this king's direct disciple selection does not need that many trials." A streak of blue light suddenly shone from up above, and then formed into an oddly shaped profound formation. After that, a huge wave suddenly rose, landing onto the profound formation in the sky. The enclosed lake water slowly began to drip from the end of the profound formation, producing a crisp clinking sound that totally did not resemble the sound of dripping water. It was clear, like the collision of ice crystals. "Sect Master, what is the meaning of this?" Mu Huanzhi was at a complete loss. Huanzhi lifted his head as his usually limpid eyes released an intense fervor. The lake water in the formation will be depleted after 6 hours. Once it has all fallen, whoever attracts the most heavenly lake ice spirits will become this king's next direct disciple. After a brief period of being stunned, everyone immediately reacted. Huanzhi cheerfully accepted it with a sect master is wise, and then turned around lightning quick. He hollered with a thunderous voice, "Fakesu!" To the side, Huanzhi also charged to Huanzhi from overhead. With a wave of her hand, she completely pushed aside all disciples that were within 300 meters of Huanzhi. "Hanny, begin now." Ice spirits of the heavenly Netherfrost Lake were by no means ordinary ice spirits. Each and every one of them were formed by the heavenly lake's cold energy and possessed high-level consciousness and close to complete souls. Even if it was a profound practitioner that only cultivated ice profound arts, not being rejected by these kinds of ice spirits was already extremely hard, let alone communicating with them. As a result, even though this trial that came from the Snow Song Realm King herself seemed to be extremely simple, it was an overall test of one's constitution, innate talent, comprehension of laws, and control. The more one's body had an affinity with ice-type powers, the more thorough one was in comprehending ice-type laws. The greater control one had over ice-type power naturally meant that it was much more likely for them to not be rejected by the Heavenly Lake's ice spirits. After that, they could then try to communicate with them and slowly attract them over. If one's control of ice-type powers was great enough, then they could even master these ice spirits and use them as their own. In comparison, one's cultivation in the profound way wasn't really important in this trial. Every time the Realm King selected a direct disciple, she had never placed any importance in their cultivation level at that time. This was because cultivation level at a certain time was just cultivation level at a certain time. Comprehension of laws and mastery of control was what decided cultivation speed, and the limits one was capable of reaching in the future. This was why Huanzhi and Fakesu were publicly acknowledged as the most qualified two people to become the Realm King's direct disciple despite only ranking in the middle in terms of strength. That being said, those with high innate talent would never be low in cultivation compared to peers of the same age. It was also Huanzhi and Fakesu who were unmatched in terms of cultivation when compared to peers of the same age in the entire Snow Song realm. After all, innate talent and strength usually went hand in hand anyways. Huanzhi didn't need Huanzhi's reminder as his body was already drifting with blue light. After several breaths, he had already channeled his frost powers to their limits. The rich, pure, cold energy carried his soul energy, spreading it toward his surroundings. At the other side, Fakesu's eyes were closed, her quiet expression possessing the purity of a snow lotus. Just a kilometer ahead of her, an ice spirit that was originally about to fly away suddenly slowed down. Then it gradually stopped, and after a long period of silence, it slowly flew toward Fakesu with some hesitation. It was obviously not just Huanzhi and Fakesu who were attracting ice spirits. Almost all of the Divine Hall disciples were doing their best to release both their profound energy and soul energy. Even though they knew their chances were uncertain, if they were able to become the sect master's direct disciple, that was undoubtedly the same as reaching heaven in one step. Even if their chances were slim, they still wanted to do their best. The lake water in the profound formation continuously dripped, bringing on the passing of time. Above the heavenly Netherfrost Lake, the fierce battle over the heavenly lake's ice spirits began its first act. It was incomparably silent and incomparably intense. At the edge of the heavenly lake, Huanzhi's consciousness had completely submerged inward. He was completely unaware of anything that was happening in the outside world, completely unaware of the fierce battle in the heavenly Netherfrost Lake, and was totally unaware of what the Snow Song Realm King had said previously. Beneath his emptied-out 5 senses, the rate in which the heavenly lake's cold energy surged into his body was several tens of times faster than Huanzhi beside him. Under the extremely pure and clean cold energy that contained extremely high-level laws of power, the profound energy in Huanzhi's body quickly circulated the cold energy again and again, bringing about a quiet change every time. Chapter 985, The Brink of the Divine Way. Ding. 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 The drops of water falling from the heavenly lake made the passing of time seem more fathomable. On the surface of the calm lake, the ice spirits that had been scared away originally were gradually calming down. Then, one by one, under the waves of calm energy that was generated with hard work. They were gradually approaching the different Divine Hall disciples in confusion and curiosity. Attracting and controlling low-level ice spirits were overly simple tasks to the Divine Hall disciples, but due to the ice spirits within Heavenly Lake being too pure and their senses being too sharp, simply not being ostracized by them was already extremely difficult. Making contact and attracting them to one side, even if it were merely one ice spirit, were tasks far more difficult beyond their imagination. 15 minutes passed, an hour passed. A Divine Hall disciple in the middle stage of the Divine Tribulation realm finally managed to attract one ice spirit to his side. At this point, there were two ice spirits dancing around him. However, their dancing was slow, and the path of movement was constantly changing, as though they might leave at any time. He let out a long sigh of relief as his concentration began to relax slightly. When he opened his eyes, he saw that the Divine Hall disciple closest to him only had one ice spirit dancing around. The person next to him had two ice spirits just like him. As his eyes swept around, he saw that there were people who already had three ice spirits. His heart suddenly skipped a beat as his eyes saw Huanzhi and Feixu in the distance. Beside the two of them, there were 5 ice spirits dancing around each of them. The ice spirits around them were much more lively, and he could inadvertently feel the joy of these ice spirits. The gap was too big. Not only were Huanzhi and Feixu the two best disciples of Ice Phoenix Divine Hall, they were far better than the rest. When talking about Ice Phoenix Divine Hall, anyone within the sect would only instantly think of Huanzhi and Feixu and not some other third person. In this battle for the spot of direct disciple, everyone similarly only thought of Huanzhi and Feixu. The disciple ranked third in terms of talent never even entered the picture. He let out a deep sigh in his heart as he finally gave up. The two ice spirits that he had attracted with difficulty were being dispersed by him, and he no longer cared about the ice spirits. Instead, he gathered his energy around his heart and began to use the cold energy of the lake's water to refine his body and profound veins. Nearly half of the Divine Hall disciples had completely given up at the hour mark. To chase after a glimpse of unlikely hope and wasting an hour of their time within the Heavenly Lake had already made them extremely regretful. 2 hours had passed, and 80% of the Divine Hall disciples had already completely given up. However, there were still several hundred disciples who were still trying fervently. All the elders and palace masters were also quietly absorbing the Heavenly Lake's cold energy. However, they were not like the various disciples who completely concentrated, but instead left half of their consciousness outside, observing the actions of the various disciples at all times. It was especially so for the Ice Phoenix Palace masters, since the disciples of Ice Phoenix Palace were relatively weaker. As time passed by, they would not be able to withstand remaining within the Heavenly Lake. At the same time, they were all observing the unprecedented battle of ice spirits. The main points of focus were undoubtedly Huanzhi and Feixu. The results were also not surprising. The two of them had attracted the most ice spirits. After 2 hours had passed, they each had 10 ice spirits around them and were evenly matched. Although the other disciples had done all that they could, the next best only had 7 ice spirits around them. Below that, those who had 5 ice spirits were also few and far between, and the gap between them could be easily seen. Amongst the 72 elders, there were 2 people who were not within the Heavenly Lake, but instead were high up in the air: Huanzhi and Huanzhi, Feixu and Huanzhi. One of them was the granddaughter, while the other was the disciple. They were definitely exceptionally concerned and did not even have the heart to enjoy the lake's cold energy. Huanzhi was still relatively calm, while Huanzhi's eyes constantly shone, and her aura did not calm down even for a second. Her hands were clenched tightly together, only occasionally relaxing. Only her mouth remained constantly shut, as she didn't dare to let out any noise that might disturb Huanzhi. Judging from the situation now, ignoring the Ice Phoenix's bloodline, Huanzhi's innate talent is not below Feixu's. Attaining such results with a male body is undoubtedly a 1,000-year rare find, Huanzhi muttered to himself with deep lament. From the situation at present, the two were evenly matched. However, he was very clear that after 6 hours, if the two were still evenly matched, it would undoubtedly be Huanzhi who would win. The first reason was due to the fact that he was male. The second reason was due to the high praise that everyone sang for him and the respect that he had earned. A cry of pain suddenly rang from below. At the edge on the Heavenly Lake, The body of an Ice Phoenix Palace disciple was twitching vigorously. His face was completely devoid of blood, and he was starting to lose control of the cold energy that was entering his body, and it was on the brink of going berserk. The palace master of the Ice Phoenix Palace he resided immediately opened her eyes and flew from the heavenly lake, grabbing him and throwing him to the bank of the heavenly lake. Color instantly returned to the Ice Phoenix disciple's face, and he got up in shame before silently sitting down at side of the lake. Each person's profound strength, talent, physique, and ability to withstand the cold energy was different. Once a person's limit was exceeded, they would have no choice but to leave. If one forcefully tried to re-enter the heavenly lake, they would injure himself instead. However, the cold energy at the side of the lake, which was much gentler, was still exceptionally valuable, and no time should be wasted. As time passed, more and more disciples were starting to be unable to bear the heavenly lake's cold energy. They could only leave the heavenly lake and come to the bank to calmly refine and maintain the benefits that they had reaped today. Furthermore, even the Ice Phoenix Palace disciple who stayed in the heavenly lake for the shortest amount of time, a mere 2 hours, could clearly feel as though he had been reborn. Refining the pure cold energy from the heavenly Netherfrost Lake was far superior to even consuming thousands of elixirs. Gradually, 4 hours had passed. All 3,500 disciples from Ice Phoenix Palace had been forced out of the heavenly lake and remained at the bank of the lake. Within the heavenly lake, only the various disciples from the Divine Hall still remained. Due to the tremendous lead that Huanzhi and Feixu had, there were fewer and fewer disciples trying their best to attract ice spirits, from a few hundred to several dozen to the final few. When the final Divine Hall disciple opened his eyes, he saw that around both Huanzhi and Feixu had 20 ice spirits dancing around them. When he looked up and only saw 14 ice spirits surrounding him, he became disheartened and sighed lightly. Accepting his fate, he waved his hand, instantly dispersing all the ice spirits around him. There were no lack of geniuses in the world. However, there was an insufficient number of unparalleled geniuses. In front of these unparalleled geniuses, the other geniuses could only become the supporting cast. 2/3 of the way into this battle of ice spirits, it had already completely turned into a battle between Huanzhi and Feixu. This result, however, was completely unsurprising. Huanzhi did not know any of this. At this time, he was already in an extremely unique, or perhaps strange, world. The channeling of the great way of the Buddha caused the cold energy within the heavenly lake to enter Huanzhi's body through the pores of his body at a rate beyond human comprehension. The other disciples had used their profound energy to lead the cold energy to enter their bodies, to refine their bodies and profound veins. But Huanzhi was directly guiding the energy into his profound veins. As more and more cold energy entered his body, the flow of profound energy within his body and profound veins became even faster. Huanzhi's consciousness completely sank as he focused on guiding the external cold energy to fuse with his own profound energy. Under such conditions, as his consciousness sank more and more, he could no longer feel the flow of time. Just like this, after an unknown amount of time had passed and the profound energy circulated up to 1,000 cycles, it suddenly stopped. All the profound energy completely stopped moving, and it was so calm that it seemed as though time itself had suddenly stopped. Huanzhi's consciousness was suddenly stunned. Then the profound energy surrounding him suddenly surged, like a raging stream that was returning ferociously into his profound veins. His consciousness also entered his profound veins, but even before he could see if there were any anomalies, a loud noise echoed throughout every corner of his consciousness. At the core of his profound veins, it seemed as though something had exploded, and the inner world of his profound veins became chaotic. Pale white mist filled it entirely, and this mist moved about crazily, continuously dispersing and gathering. Occasionally it flashed with a blue glow. Occasionally it surged with flames. Occasionally it flashed with purple lightning. Occasionally it was completely black. Just like a small world that had suddenly fallen apart due to a calamity, in the end, it completely fell apart and all the origin profound energy in his profound veins dispersed, rushing away. This shock was not trivial either. The dispersion of the origin profound energy. This meant that one's cultivation thus far had gone down the drain. To any profound practitioner, this was undoubtedly a nightmarish scene. Despite his shock, Huanzhi suddenly realized that speaks of strange starlight shone at the center of his profound veins that was swiftly becoming empty. It was like a nebula in the dark sky that was shining weakly, yet the speaks were exceptionally mysterious. An unusually mysterious feeling suddenly spread from within his body and consciousness. This feeling was peculiar and indescribable. It was a feeling as though everything was being upgraded, like one's entire body and soul were now in a world completely unlike before. As if they were enjoying the aura and hearing the voices of another world. Within his profound veins, the four colors, blue, red, purple, and black lit up once again. The strange nebula at the center was also spinning slowly. With each round, it would grow larger, and the glow of the stars would also become brighter. At the same time, the strange feeling within his body became even more intense. His veins, skeleton, blood, hair, and even every single cell throbbed with intensity. Even his consciousness was constantly capturing different images. These images began from when he was 16. They began from the day his profound veins were restructured, replaying every step he treated on the profound way. All the training, every breakthrough, every unusual encounter, every danger, every peril, every life and death situation. Within these images, it was as though he had walked through his entire life once again. 8 years, from the perspective of the profound way, 8 years was but a very, very short amount of time. However, all the life and death encounters he had experienced would probably exceed what others would experience within 1,000 lives. At the heavenly Netherfrost Lake, up in the sky above the enormous frost dragon, a strong gaze suddenly shot downwards from behind the mist and landed on Yuanqi. At this time, Mu Bingyun also turned and looked at Yuanqi in a flash on him. Countless profound streaks of profound energy were being released, but did not disperse. Instead, they turned into a ring shape and spun rapidly around him, causing the surrounding air to also turn chaotic. At the same time, his body began to tremble violently, and ripples that seemed like water ripples appeared on his body. Yuanqi and Mu Xiaolan were extremely close to one another, and the intense change in aura caused Mu Xiaolan to jolt back to consciousness. She saw Yuanqi's condition and was about to say something when Mu Bingyun's voice rang in the depths of her soul. "Don't say anything. He's about to break through." Mu Xiaolan reached up with her hand and pressed strongly on her lips before retreating carefully. Her pupils expanded as she stared wide-eyed at Yuanqi. Yuanqi's transformation instantly attracted the attention of all the Ice Phoenix Palace disciples on the side of the lake. This was no ordinary breakthrough. It was a profound practitioner's advancement from the mortal realm into the divine realm. It was a true advancement and rebirth. Finally, for the first time, Yuanqi, who had arrived in the Snow Song realm 3 months ago, under circumstances that he completely did not expect, was taking his first actual step into the divine way. Chapter 986. Finally entering the divine way, why did it just have to be now? Mu Bingyun's brows creased. If it were to be said that a small realm's breakthrough was a quantitative change in profound strength, and a great realm's breakthrough was a qualitative change, then ascending to the divine realms from the mortal realms was a complete and thorough transformation that was entirely different from any other previous breakthrough. This process was also extremely long and difficult, and usually took several days to finish. Even if one's innate talent was extremely high, having it go smoothly would still require several hours. Furthermore, it would also be accompanied by considerably high risk. During the process, one must not be disturbed in any way, or else it would be easy to receive irreversible damage to one's profound veins. As a result, when profound practitioners at the peak of the mortal way sensed that they were on the verge of breaking through, they would immediately choose to go into seclusion. Yet Yuanqi's breakthrough into the divine way came so suddenly. Upon stepping into the divine way, all profound energy in the entire body would go through a complete transformation. During this process, one's profound energy would break from their control, and they wouldn't be able to channel or release it, which also meant that he was simply unable to handle the Heavenly Lake's cold energy. The Heavenly Lake's cold energy here had undoubtedly become his largest obstacle in his breakthrough now, and it was most likely that it would heavily damage his body and profound veins in a short amount of time. This was why Yuanqi suddenly breaking through here was extremely dangerous. Mu Bingyun no longer hesitated as she quickly took action, intending to release her cold energy to erect a barrier that sealed his surroundings. At the same time, her mind was quickly churning up ways of how to get him out of the heavenly Netherfrost Lake without disturbing him. However, before her cold energy had yet to be released, she suddenly stopped, because the speed in which the profound energy that circled around him was reaching an incomprehensible level. Since it was a transformation, it naturally ought to be slow and difficult, but the speed at which the profound energy around Yuanqi's body circulated was actually as fast as a tornado. Without the protection of profound energy, once the cold energy entered the body, one would shiver from the cold and be in intolerable pain. However, Yuanqi's complexion was actually as normal as ever, with not a single twitch that indicated he was affected by the cold energy at all. Even though the circulation of profound energy was extremely fast, it was not disorderly at all. Mu Bingyun's hand paused in place and didn't move for a long while, amazement that didn't scatter for a long period of time within her gaze. Behind her, Mu Xiaolan was filled with nervousness, not daring to utter a single sound or take too deep of a breath. Only Mu Bingyun, who was the closest to him, sensed Yuanqi's unusual condition. As for the others, whether it be the elders, palace masters, or disciples, they quickly moved their gaze away from him after their initial shock. To Yuanqi, this was a rebirth that would allow him to enter a whole new realm. But to everyone else present, who had long been in the divine way, it wasn't even strange at all, and some had even snorted disdainfully in secret. This was because to them, it was only a starting point they had long since passed through. The reason why Yuanqi had attracted their gazes earlier was only because the timing of his breakthrough was a bit of a killjoy. On the other side was the intense battle that decided who was going to be the Realm King's direct disciple. So who would bother to pay attention to a breakthrough into the starting point of the divine way? From Mu Bingyun's appearance, she was obviously protecting him as well. With her personally protecting him, there shouldn't be any problems even if he was breaking through here. In the world of Yuanqi's profound veins, the nebula slowly grew amidst its quick rotation, and the twinkling stars within it also gradually became more concentrated. The four colored radiances brilliantly shone at the same frequency as the inner world within his profound veins underwent a world-turning change. The senses within every corner of his body also changed, as his perception of the world also distinctively changed. His consciousness continuously played the scenes in his head over and over again, as though it was bidding farewell to his past, declaring that he was now about to step into a whole new world in which he would possess a whole new life and power. The only thing that didn't change was the devil origin orb in his profound veins. It was still dull gray and deathly silent. The heavenly Netherfrost Lake was completely silent, with the only sound there being the dripping lake water that pounded at one's soul. Everyone's attention concentrated on Mu Hanyi and Mu Feixu, and as time elapsed, the contest between them was at an even greater stalemate. They attracted the same number of ice spirits, and there was no disparity between them since the very beginning. 4 hours had passed, and both of them had attracted 24 ice spirits. 30 minutes later, at the same exact time, it had become 26, and then 2070 again 15 minutes later. It was as though time had slowed down. Whether it was the Ice Phoenix Palace disciples at the edge of the lake or the Divine Hall disciples inside the lake, they all stared attentively with wide eyes and halted breaths, waiting to see the final result. If there was a slight gap between them, it would not make the atmosphere this stifling. However, not only was their ice spirit count identical since the start, their differences were next to nothing. I never expected that these two would actually be this evenly matched in terms of ice laws. 6 hours are about to pass, and we still cannot tell for sure which is the stronger, a Divine Hall elder lamented. It is simply a great honor for two such outstanding disciples to appear at the same time within this generation, stated another Divine Hall elder. And it was right at this moment that everyone's gazes and expressions abruptly changed. This was because in the last 15 minutes, both Mu Hanyi and Mu Feixu's power and mind concentrated on the exact same ice spirit. The two also discovered this at the same time, but neither shifted their attention, because this was the closest ice spirit. The fact that both of them were currently in a deadlock with barely any disparity meant it was almost certain they would lose if they chose another target at this critical juncture, which would decide their fate. This situation made the previously incredibly tense atmosphere suddenly grow cold. This time, even the various elders and palace masters were holding their breaths. The time limit had now reached the last 15 minutes of its deadline. 15 minutes was only enough for them to attract one ice spirit, which meant that since both of them had chosen this particular ice spirit, it would directly decide today's outcome. This ice spirit's consciousness was stirred by the two frost auras that attracted and beckoned it. After a short period of hesitation, it then flew toward the two people. The speed in which it flew was distinctly faster than the rate at which the other ice spirits flew. It was just that its trajectory wasn't exactly a straight line as it drifted unstably, going left and right from time to time. Finally, it stopped, right between Huanzhi and Feixu. Then it stayed in that spot for a long while, obviously at a loss about who to pick. Ding, 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 the lake water in the profound formation lessened as the sound of the end of this showdown was almost within reach. Everyone's gaze firmly focused on the ice spirit between the two people. As though it had been fixed in place, despite the fact that the timer had reached its final countdown, it still wouldn't move. Go over to Huanzhi. Huanzhi's breathing also stopped with the halting of the ice spirit. Even though she had a high cultivation level, her face had gone red from holding her breath. The blue veins on her tightly fisted hands seemed to be on the verge of splitting apart. Good luck, Feixu. Huanzhi's forehead had long been matted in sweat. Even though he wasn't as serious about the outcome as Huanzhi, since he was able to calmly accept it if Huanzhi won, now that it had reached the last 15 minutes of such an intense battle, he couldn't help but tense up. Although Feixu was naturally indifferent and rarely spoke, which Ice Phoenix disciple didn't dream about being the great realm king's direct disciple. Ding, ding, ding. The heavenly lake's water still dropped methodically, and the remaining lake water inside the profound formation was finally down to the last 100 drops. 90 drops, 80 drops, 70 drops. Huanzhi and Feixu's eyes were firmly closed since the beginning, yet icy mist rose from their bodies as they unreservedly released their lifetime's insights about the ice laws. Before today, both originally possessed near identical, absolute confidence in themselves, but they didn't expect that their opponent was far more powerful than their expectations. Even though the two were publicly recognized to be at the top of this generation's Ice Phoenix disciples, they normally reserved their power until today, when they didn't hold anything back. 50 drops, 40 drops, 30 drops. Each drop of water heavily pounded at the heartstrings of every one person, yet the ice spirit that would decide the ultimate outcome still stubbornly stayed motionless in place. In the entire heavenly Netherfrost Lake, the only person whose heartstrings weren't stretched taut was, obviously, Xianxia, who was inside his own world. It was also at this time that his breakthrough came to a perfect end after a short 2 hours. The profound energy around Xianxia's body had already stopped rotating and soundlessly returned into his body. The world within his profound veins had completely changed from its formerly dense, misty state and was now like a boundless, starry sky. The specks of stars twinkling within it contained a mysterious and strong aura. Aura of the divine way, aura of the first level of the divine origin realm. The divine origin realm was a mortal's first step into the divine way. It was the step in which one's vital energy becomes divine, causing the profound practitioner's body to exceed human limits and also substantially strengthen. One's lifespan would also increase greatly as well. This kind of change was an extremely distinct transformation on other profound practitioners' bodies, but on Xianxia, it didn't seem to change that intensely. This was because Xianxia had already passed the category of mortals. To others, this was a transformation, but to him, it was just another increase in strength. What excited Xianxia, however, was his explosive increase in profound strength. His perception of profound energy had completely changed. Previously, even when he was exchanging blows with a profound practitioner in the divine way, he couldn't sense it that clearly. However, what he felt from his body right now was like another domain of power, even though it was just one breakthrough. From the 10th level of the sovereign profound realm to the 1st level of the divine origin realm, he felt that his strength had not just doubled, but might even have increased more than tenfold. Beneath the amplification of the evil god's power, he himself was unable to estimate how powerful of a strength he could release. This kind of unprecedented advancement in power caused Xianxia's heart to surge for a long period of time. His confidence and arrogance had also consequently increased as well, so much that he felt as though he was already powerful to the point of omnipotence. While immersed in his joy, he forgot where he was currently located as he gave a delighted roar. Both his arms spread open wide as he recklessly released his profound energy that had stepped into the divine way. At the same time, his consciousness immediately awakened. 25 drops, 20 drops, 15 drops. The lake water was gradually approaching its final drops, and at this time the ice spirit, which had been still for a long time, now bounced within everyone's gaze. It finally began to move. It shifted a bit after its hesitation, and it astonishingly shifted toward Huanzhi. Then, as though it made its final decision, it started flying toward Huanzhi. 10 drops, Hanny won. The final outcome had clearly emerged within these last 15 minutes. Everything was finally settled after the Ice Spirit's selection. Ha 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 ha! Huanzhi completely relaxed. Even though she had several thousand years of cultivation under her belt, she was unable to suppress the mad joy she felt as she laughed heartily. Sigh. Huanzhi made a long sigh. It was intense to such a degree, but the final outcome simply did not have anything to do with one's strength, but more so one's resonance with the ice spirits. But a loss was still a loss. Even though Huanzhi's eyes were still shut, a smile had already appeared at the corner of his lips, and his body was also visibly shaking with excitement. And it was at this time that a profound energy which had just entered the divine way was untimely released from the edge of the lake, alongside an even more uncourteous, excited roar. The instant the roar sounded, the ice spirit flying toward Huanzhi suddenly stopped. Then, it released a never-before-heard, clear ethereal cry as its flight speed suddenly accelerated. Faster than any other ice spirit had moved, however, the path in which it flew changed. It no longer flew toward Huanzhi. Instead, it suddenly flew toward the distant lakeside. It flew toward Xianxia. Before the crowd had yet to realize what had happened, the tranquil heavenly Netherfrost Lake suddenly rippled in all directions. The ice spirits in the distance that were frolicking around all released an extremely beautiful and melodious spirit sound. Then they all began to fly about and chased after that last ice spirit, the speed in which they flew making them look like snow-white shooting stars. It was also at this instant that the ice spirits which danced around Huanzhi and Feixu, the ice spirits they used an entire 6 hours and all their power to attract, left them without the slightest of hesitation. They too joined the other ice spirits and flew directly at Xianxia. They were extremely fast, and all of them flew to Xianxia's side. The ice spirits that flew toward the Divine Hall disciples were all careful and hesitant in their slowness. However, they all danced around Xianxia with incomparable excitement, their voices in high spirits. They all tried to outdo one another as they neared him, as though there was some kind of fatal attractive force on his body. In a few breaths of time, all 3,000 ice spirits in the heavenly Netherforest Lake had all gathered around Xianxia, and not a single one wasn't there. Ding! The last drop of lake water within the profound formation had fallen, and Xianxia also opened his eyes at this time. He was then instantly stunned, shocked to see the ice spirits around him flying with excitement, and stunned frozen faces all around him. Chapter 987, Questioning of the 4 Great Creation Gods within the Primordial God Race. Mo'i's creation god power was power, Zai was order, Li Xiu was life, and the evil gods were the elements. The absolute power of the elements. Ancient gods like the vermilion bird, phoenix, and the golden crow were called the 3 supreme fire attribute beasts, while the azure dragon, ice phoenix, and the ice killin were called the 3 supreme water attribute beasts. However, purely in regards to the elemental laws, these 6 great beasts fell far short of the evil god. The phoenix wouldn't fear phoenix flames, but it could still be harmed by the flames of the golden crow and vermilion bird. The azure dragon could control the world's water, but it was impossible for it to not fear the ice from the ice phoenix and ice killin. As for Xianxia, even though his power was far beneath them, he did not fear fire or water in any shape or form. This included lightning as well. If he was able to find the wind and earth attribute evil god seeds in the future, he would not need to fear the power of the wind or earth either. This was also why, even though Xianxia's great way of the Buddha advanced so slowly, and his star god's broken shadow only reached the 5th stage, he found no barriers when successfully comprehending high-level profound arts of the divine way like the world ode of the phoenix, golden crow burning world, and ice phoenix god investiture canon, in a short period of time. The evil god's power over the elements was high, and it could possibly even have transcended one's recognition of the law's boundaries. It wasn't restricted by the laws at all, reaching a heaven-defying realm which even gods found to be incomprehensible and unfathomable. But even if that was the case, Xianxia wanting to release frost aura to attract a few ice spirits was comparatively easy. However, attracting all these ice spirits over with just profound energy was simply impossible. Though his elemental power was as high in terms of the laws, his profound cultivation level was just too low. However, this opportunity just happened to come coincidentally. Xianxia had just completed his breakthrough from the mortal way into the divine way. What he released was his primal, newly transformed, purest burst of profound energy. This burst was extremely pure and clean, and it was also the profound energy which came from the evil god's power. To these pure ice spirits, it was like they had scented the smell of the first primordial source of cold energy. This caused them to reflexively flock over. This kind of situation would never have happened, even if he wanted it to, if Yuanqi had his previous profound strength. But it just had to be at this time. Yuanqi was completely unaware of all this. He had only released his profound energy in his excitement to get a feel for his reborn power. He didn't even know what was happening in the heavenly Netherfrost Lake. When he opened his eyes, he felt that the serious atmosphere around him didn't feel quite right. Everyone's gaze was actually concentrated on him, and dancing ice spirits circled around him like stars revolving around the moon, which made him, who was obviously the weakest in this place, directly become this world's focal point. This. No traces of the usual solemnity and dignity remained with the various elders and hall masters. Their expressions twisted like they had seen ghosts in broad daylight. Even if they put together everyone's age and experience together, they still would not understand the scene before them. Huanzhi and Feixu also got up from the heavenly Netherfrost Lake. They stared blankly at the 3,000 ice spirits circling around Yuanqi and couldn't recover their senses for a long time. What happened? Yuanqi stood up and then turned to ask Mu Bingyun. If he was suddenly being stared so closely by the old monsters of Divine Ice Phoenix Sect before this, he would have been extremely nervous. However, he was still in high spirits after having entered the divine way, so even though he was surprised, he didn't feel panicked at all. Mu Bingyun was evidently also in a stunned state, while the Mu Xiaolan behind her had gone completely stupid. Her mouth gaped so wide that her own fist might have been able to fit in it. Mu Bingyun let out a sigh and said with considerable calm, "The sect master set a time limit of 6 hours. In 6 hours, the person who is able to attract the most ice spirits will become her direct disciple. And you?" Something else had also shocked her. Yuanqi had actually used only 2 hours to completely break through to the divine way. That was such a short period of time, and it was even in the extremely dangerous heavenly Netherfrost Lake. She had never heard of such a thing like that happening before. But the others didn't have a mind to pay attention to that. The result that was about to be announced. Or rather, the result of the showdown that was already revealed had actually undergone such a heaven-shaking change within the last several breaths of time. This completely stupefied all the elders, palace masters, and disciples present. The lips of Mu Huanzhi, who was already prepared to make the announcement, flapped several times before he finally spoke. What's this? What exactly happened on this child's body? A single phrase flashed in everyone's mind. Who the hell knows what happened? In merely 10 breaths of time, all of the heavenly Netherfrost Lake's ice spirits had been attracted. Such a feat was impossible for the various elders and palace masters, let alone divine hall disciples. Yet such a thing had happened right before their eyes, on the body of a new disciple who had just stepped into the divine way, who possessed a cultivation level so low they wouldn't even spare a second glance at. It was impossible for them to believe that Yuanqi had relied on his own frost aura to attract these ice spirits. This was because even the sect master was unable to do this with her might. Furthermore, the profound energy Yuanqi had so suddenly released earlier was only the profound energy released from his initial state. It wasn't even ice profound energy. The Snow Song Realm king atop the airborne enormous frost dragon had been silent since the very beginning. Even she was unable to comprehend what had happened on Yuanqi's body. Among everyone present, the ones whose hearts were undulating the most were unquestionably Huanzhi and Mu Yunzhi. When Mu Yunzhi had seen Huanzhi's clear victory, she was filled with boundless joy. But now such a thing had happened, her face suddenly went dark after her initial shock. Then she recovered to her normal state as she said in a loud voice, "Great Elder, it's time to announce the results. My disciple Hanni came out victorious, and everyone has seen it with their eyes." "But this, what but?" Mu Yunzhi glanced at Yuanqi. "Did you all not see that this kid just happened to complete his breakthrough a moment ago? He entered the divine way, so what he had released earlier was naturally the newborn profound energy of the first stage of the divine way. These ice spirits naturally would prefer things that are the most primal and pure. This was why they would all gather around him. That's not strange at all. It's fortunate that he has not ruined our great event since the final results had already come out." Mu Yunzhi's words stunned everyone present. It was only after a long period of time that many of them began to nod. So that's how it is. No wonder. The extremely pure burst of initial profound energy he had released after he had broken through truly was the reason why the ice spirits had been attracted to Yuanqi. But this was definitely not able to happen with anyone else's initial cold energy. Or perhaps it should be said that aside from Yuanqi, no one else was able to do it to such a degree. However, what had happened to Yuanqi was something they were simply unable to comprehend. As a result, this argument from Mu Yunjai that only seemed a bit forced caused everyone, the elders and palace masters included, who were completely shocked and dazed to grab at this justification that seemed to be able to explain what had happened. They nodded their heads one after another in approval, because aside from this, they weren't able to think of any other reasons. It was just impossible for Yuanqi to rely on his own cold energy to summon the ice spirits. That does seem quite reasonable. Mu Huanzhi also slowly nodded. Once one was unable to think of any other possibilities, any possibility, no matter how forced it was, would seem many times more reasonable. After all, the first burst of primal profound energy after entering the divine way being the purest was true. So it might be true that it was an aura that the ice spirits loved the most. Yuanqi was the first person in all of history to have entered the divine way in the heavenly Netherfrost Lake. There was no precedent before him. After all, those below the divine way weren't permitted to enter the heavenly Netherfrost Lake. It shouldn't be that simple, Mu Sushan muttered, but he then shook his head after saying that. But this really is the only explanation. After finding something that was able to explain what had happened, everyone's shock was naturally being dispelled. In the heavenly Netherfrost Lake, a smile surfaced on Mu Hanni's face once more. He shifted his gaze to the side to look toward Mu Feixu, but she was still as quiet as before. Like ice that would never thaw, she was silent without a single ripple. Following the disappearance of Yuanqi's profound energy, the ice spirits that were flying around him also began to quickly scatter. At this point, he was also made aware of everything that had happened within the heavenly Netherfrost Lake from Mu Bingyun's sound transmission. His heart fiercely shook as the depths of his eyes flashed with an odd light that was also especially intense. Cough! Mu Huanzhi turned around. He glanced at Mu Feixu and after sighing inwardly he announced, Sect Master's time limit of 6 hours has already passed. Even though a small incident happened at the end, that last ice spirit was indeed attracted by Hanni, and everyone here has seen it with their own eyes. As such, the final victor of this contest for the Sect Master's direct disciple is Mu Hanni. When Mu Huanzhi's voice fell, many disciples of the Divine Hall and Ice Phoenix Palace all let out thunderous shouts. These excited shouts also showed how high of a prestige Mu Hanni had within these disciples. Ha 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 ha! Mu Yunjai laughed heartily as her facial features blossomed. She held out a hand toward the distant Mu Hanni and said, Hanni, well done. You sure did not disappoint me. I am proud of you. Come up and pay respects to the Sect Master once more. Once the discipleship rites complete, you will be the Sect Master's direct disciple. I heard that Hanni's royal father's 1,000-year birthday is coming up in not even a month. This must be the best present he'll receive. Another Divine Hall elder commented with a smile. More than the best present, I'm afraid that this birthday celebration will be unlike any other, said the first palace's palace master. Mu Yunjai was not the only one who was unable to contain her joy if Mu Hanni became the realm king's direct disciple. It was a popular opinion within the entire sect. Yes, Mu Hanni replied. Then he flew up, his white clothes fluttering, and landed beside Mu Yunjai with not a single drop of the heavenly lake's water on him. It was at this moment that an extremely ill-timed voice heavily came over. Within the atmosphere that had become enthusiastic, it was especially cold and piercing to the ears. Everyone's gaze immediately turned, and the atmosphere also congealed. Mu Bingyun moved, wanting to say something, but then didn't. She didn't stop Yuanqi at all when he walked out. This disciple has a few questions that he wishes to ask Great Elder for guidance on. As an Ice Phoenix disciple, forcing himself into the conversation in front of all the various elders was already offensive to the extreme. Mu Yunjai was originally overjoyed, but once Yuanqi's words came piercing over, he had completely spoiled the moment for her, causing her to become enraged. That added to the unpleasant fact that he had nearly ruined everything just a moment ago made her immediately voice out her fury. What are you? Since when did you get to talk? Scram, Mu Bingyun's gaze shifted and fixed on Mu Yunjai. She then said in an incomparably flat voice, He is my palace's disciple. Being stared at by Mu Bingyun actually caused Mu Yunjai's pupils to suddenly contract. Even her imposingness had lessened by several degrees. Mu Sushan advanced, chuckling. A disciple asking for guidance is quite common. Yunqi, what do you need great elders' guidance on? You may continue, Mu Huanzhi nodded slightly. When he saw Mu Bingyun stare at Mu Yunjai, he very clearly saw that Mu Bingyun was very protective of her new disciple. The first question this disciple seeks guidance on is, Yun Qi's face didn't change as he spoke in a tone that was neither servile nor overbearing. In order to select her direct disciple, the sect master decided it to be a battle of ice spirits. In 6 hours, whoever had the most ice spirits would be the winner. That being the case, the sect master didn't restrict the participants to only be Divine Hall disciples, right? She didn't say that Ice Phoenix Palace disciples didn't qualify, right? The sect master did not set those restrictions. Mu Huanzhi shook his head. The second question, Yun Qi then continued. Before this disciple attracted all the ice spirits over, had the last drop of lake water that the sect master arranged fallen. Mu Huanzhi's expression changed as he finally became aware of what Yun Qi wanted to ask for guidance on. Everyone present also was now aware of this fact as well. Mu Yunjai's face also sank as she sneered. Kid, what are you trying to say? Don't tell me that you want. Yes, I do want to ask. Yun Qi suddenly raised his voice. When the 6-hour time limit the sect master had placed came, this disciple had 3,000 ice spirits beside him and Mu Hanni had not a single one. Anyone ought to have seen that as long as they weren't blind. But the result you all announced was Mu Hanni being the victor. This disciple wishes to ask, how does that make sense? Chapter 988, Refusal. Although they had already guessed what Yun Qi was probably going to say when he actually said it, all the elders and palace masters were still stunned. Instead, it was the Divine Hall and Ice Phoenix Palace disciples that displayed all sort of emotions. Some sneered and laughed coldly, while others showed excited expressions as though they were watching some show. Even more people had the expressions like they were looking at a fool. Only after Yun Qi suddenly broke through and attracted all the ice spirits over had the final drop of lake water fallen within the profound formation. This was indeed something that everyone had personally witnessed. When the finally drop of lake water fell from there were 3,000 ice spirits around Yun Qi and none around Mu Hanni. However, nobody would accept this result because no one could link Yun Qi and direct disciple together. Before this, even Yun Qi himself would not have either. This result was a pure, unexpected, and outrageous accident. In anyone's eyes, it was also a pure accident. Although Yun Qi had a small reputation by defeating someone in the Divine Origin realm while being in the Sovereign Profound realm, and also due to the fact that he was personally brought along by Mu Bingyun in front of Mu Hanni, who was blessed by the heavens, Yun Qi was worse than the mud underneath a rainbow. He had also only broken through to the Divine Origin realm today. Other than the protection of Mu Bingyun and Mu Xiaolan and his own excitement, the process of his breakthrough was completely ignored by the others. One was from the lower realms that had only been in the Snow Song realm for 3 months and only finally stepped into the Divine Way today. The other was a member of the Snow Song royal family who possessed esteemed status, talent that only appeared once every 1,000 years, and was even in the middle stage of the Divine Tribulation realm before the age of 30. He had even given it his all without restraint today, causing all the elders and palace masters to be greatly shocked once again. Therefore, when Yun Qi suddenly lured away all the ice spirits, though it was a great shock to everyone and though in terms of results, he had completely defeated Mu Hanni and Mu Feixu, everyone's first and only reaction was only the word accident. No matter who it was, they were unable to shift the words direct disciple from Mu Hanni onto Yun Qi. First stage of the Divine Origin realm. Simply based on profound strength, he belonged to the very bottom of freezing snow hall with regards to the term direct disciple. It was a concept that was worlds apart from him. However, they did not expect for Yun Qi to actually have the guts and thick skin to bring it up. He even had an attitude of confrontation. Seeing Yun Qi's confrontational attitude, their first reaction was shock, and then they felt that it was rather funny and even a little embarrassing. Of course, the one who found it the funniest was definitely Mu Yunjai. Ha 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 ha! Mu Yunjai roared with laughter before continuing with a face of mocking. In that case, we should announce that you have one and let you become the sect master's direct disciple. Shouldn't that be the case? Yun Qi rebutted. With regards to becoming the direct disciple of the sect master, Yuanqi had never thought about it before and always thought that it had nothing to do with him no matter what. However, now that the opportunity had so unknowingly presented itself to him, and after hearing Mu Bingyun's sound transmission, his heart started to pump vigorously. What he desired the most was profound strength. It was only 27 months away from the profound God convention now. 2 years and a little bit more of time. Although under his recklessness, he cultivated by self-mutilation and obtained frightening results. To reach the divine tribulation realm before the profound God convention was still an unattainable dream. However, if he could become the sect master's direct disciple, he would be able to receive personal guidance of the Ice Phoenix Sect master. He would be able to obtain the Ice Phoenix divine blood and cultivate the highest form of profound arts within the Snow Song realm. Most importantly, he would be able to enjoy the best form of resources within the Snow Song realm and also attain convenience that far exceeded what he had now. In that case, there might be the possibility that he would actually break through to the divine tribulation realm that he had been dreaming of. Therefore, when the opportunity to become the direct disciple suddenly presented itself, it was like light that suddenly shone in complete darkness. It immediately turned into the strongest and deepest desire in Yuanqi's heart. Heh, such a ridiculous joke. Mu Yunjai only felt that the current Yuanqi was extremely absurd. Mu Hanyi is the most outstanding disciple in the current generation of our divine sect. Today, he has also proven that he has the ability to become the sect master's direct disciple. As for you, what or why? Even before she finished speaking, she suddenly felt Mu Bingyun's gaze and immediately stopped and changed what she was going to say. HMPH, which part of you is even able to compare to Hanyi? For you to attract so many ice spirits, it was but an accident caused by your breakthrough. You yourself are fully aware of whether or not you had attracted them with your strength. You actually dare to jump out. Are you not afraid of losing face for you and your master? Mu Yunjai's words caused all the disciples present to laugh in secret, while majority of the elders and palace masters also shook their heads with laughter. Mu Huanzhi frowned and did not speak. However, Mu Sushan suddenly spoke. Although that is the case, based on the results, Yuanqi did indeed win. Since that is the case, we do indeed owe Yuanqi an explanation. Expectedly, Mu Sushan's words caused Mu Yunjai to instantly become enraged. Explanation. What explanation? Let me repeat, for him to attract those ice spirits, it was only because it coincided with his breakthrough. Not blaming him more for nearly disrupting the results is already being kind to him. What kind of explanation do we still owe him? You can't possibly still adhere by the so-called results and allow him to overtake Hanyi and become the direct disciple. Wouldn't that be the shame of our entire sect? Hearing Mu Yunjai's words and thinking about Yuanqi's birth and profound strength, everyone had the same sentiments. If Yuanqi were to really become the sect master's direct disciple, it would undoubtedly become the biggest joke in the entire history of the Snow Song realm. Of course, such matters would definitely not occur. Yuanqi's current struggle was already a joke. There's no need to argue anymore. Great Elder Mu Huanzhi seemed to have made his decision. The rules were personally set by the sect master, and the person we're choosing is the sect master's direct disciple. As such, it is obviously up to the sect master to personally decide how to settle this matter. Mu Yunjai immediately reacted. She hastily bowed down and respectfully said, Yunjai was too agitated previously and spoke too much. All such matters follow sect master's decision. She was very certain for sect master to give up on Mu Hanyi and get a ridiculous person like Yuanqi as her direct disciple. She would never believe it even if she was beaten to death. Huanzhi, the Snow Song Realm king who overlooked the Heavenly Lake, finally spoke. As her voice rang, the entire Heavenly Lake fell silent. Regarding how to settle this, you must have a plan, just say it. The Snow Song Realm king's gaze seemed as though it could look through a person's heart and soul. This was something Mu Huanzhi had already gotten used to as he quickly paid his respects and said, Yes, sect master. Even though an accident had occurred, Sushan isn't wrong. Based on the results, it's indeed Yuanqi who won, and it is also logical for him to demand an explanation. However, what Yunjai said isn't wrong either. When sect master used the ice spirits to decide who the direct disciple was, it was so that the test would test their talent, constitution, and control over the laws of ice. However, when Yuanqi attracted the ice spirits over, it was completely unrelated to all of these, and it was probably indeed due to his coincidental breakthrough. Therefore, Huanzhi has a humble opinion. Mu Huanzhi looked up slightly, and that is for Hanny and Yuanqi to have another match. Everyone instantly looked at each other. What kind of additional match? The Snow Song Realm King asked. Mu Huanzhi replied sternly, although this will be an additional test, it concerns Sect Master's direct disciple. Naturally, it would have to be a test that covers talent, constitution, and laws of ice. Most disciples have already spent a great amount of time in the Heavenly Lake, so the additional test should not take up too much time. Therefore, Huanzhi suggests for Hanny and Yuanqi to dive into the Heavenly Netherfrost Lake, and the winner will be decided based on the depths of their dive. Once Mu Huanzhi's suggestion was heard, everyone's eyes lit up. The deeper within the Heavenly Netherfrost Lake one went, the stronger the cold energy. Furthermore, the extent of increase of cold energy was exceptionally overbearing. Even for a Divine Hall disciple, their limit was around 600 to 700 feet. Furthermore, they didn't dare to stay even a bit longer in such depths for fear of eternally perishing within the Heavenly Lake. In the entire history of the Snow Song Realm, the person who dove the deepest was the current Snow Song Realm King. It was said that she had once reached a depth of 20,000 feet before. The severity of the cold energy, there was something unimaginable even to the God Realm powerhouses. Perhaps even the rumored netherworld frost hell was merely comparable. However, that still wasn't the bottom of the lake. Regarding how deep the Heavenly Lake was and what hid at the bottom of the lake, in the 900,000-year history of the Snow Song Realm, no one had figured it out yet. To dive deeper, one's profound strength was one aspect, but one's body's compatibility with cold energy, and the ability to control the natural laws of ice was equally important. With such a method of additional testing, the result would be determined swiftly. Everyone could see that this test was only because they were helpless against Yuanqi's objection. Because based on the result, it was a completely logical objection. This concerned the laws of ice. How could Yuanqi be able to compare with Mu Hanny? Regarding this additional test, even if they used their toes to think, they knew that Mu Hanny would definitely be victorious. As for Yuanqi, entering, or even touching the Heavenly Lake's water was enough to choke him. After all, for the past 6 hours, he had been staying at the bank of the lake, not daring to enter it. After all, they could not let Yuanqi be the sect master's direct disciple no matter what. Great Elder's suggestion is excellent, Mu Huanzhi hastily added before nodding strongly. Not only is this additional test fair, it also gives Yuanqi a sufficient explanation. If he's able to defeat my disciple in the aspect of the laws, then I naturally would not have anything to say. Sect Master, what do you think of Huanzhi's suggestion? Mu Huanzhi carefully asked. Very good. Behind the mist, the Snow Song Realm King nodded slightly and replied concisely, Let's do that. Upon obtaining the Sect Master's approval, Mu Huanzhi heaved a hidden sigh of relief before turning to Mu Hanny. Hanny, you had already used up your strength to attract the ice spirits for 6 hours. You must be tired. Do you need some rest first? Even a fool could hear that Mu Huanzhi's words were purely customary. Mu Huanyi bowed and replied, I thank Great Elder for the concern. This disciple is in great condition now. Everything will follow the arrangement of Sect Master and Great Elder. However, I have some objections. Oh, Mu Huanzhi's face revealed a slight smile. What objection? Mu Hanny replied. Although one's constitution and the comprehension of the laws are important when diving into the Heavenly Lake's water, profound strength is equally important. However, Sect Master choosing a direct disciple does not emphasize on profound cultivation, but more on one's constitution and comprehension of the laws. In terms of profound strength alone, this disciple is far superior to Junior Yuanqi. Therefore, this competition is unfair to Junior Yuanqi. Mu Huanzhi was not surprised and smiled. Then, how should it be done for it to be fair? This disciple has a bold suggestion. Junior Yuanqi only has to achieve 20% of what this disciple achieves to be victorious. This disciple would also lose without complaints or arguments if that was the case. Mu Hanny's words were extremely sincere and calm. Ha 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 ha, Mu Huanzhi laughed loudly. It could not be better that you said these words. All the various elders and palace's masters nodded strongly, revealing expressions of praise. All the surrounding disciples also looked at Mu Hanny with gazes of respect and admiration. Mu Huanzhi also laughed. Such magnanimity, you're indeed my Mu Huanzhi's excellent disciple. All right, then let's follow Hanny's idea. Yuanqi, did you hear? You only have to achieve 20% of what my disciple Hanny attains in order to gain victory. Furthermore, this was personally suggested by Hanny. Do you still have anything to say? Regardless whether it was 20%, 10%, or 5%, Huanzhi would not feel worried. Instead, she was slightly worried for Xianxia. With his cultivation level, what if he didn't even dare enter? That would be too boring. He should at least struggle a little so it's a bit more fun. Mu Bingyun did not speak but continued staring at Xianxia. Since that's the case, Xianxia, what else do you have to say? If there's nothing else, we can begin, Huanzhi said laughingly. Xia's feet had yet to move and his expression was as still as before. He stared at Huanzhi and coldly uttered out 2 words, I refuse. He was obviously first in freezing Snow Hall's exam, but he was forced to prove himself. Today's result had been his complete victory over Huanzhi, but he still had to be tested again. Based on what? Based on what did he have to repeatedly encounter such extreme bias and unfair treatment in the Snow Song realm? Chapter 989, Huge Disaster. Oh, Huanzhi's brows shifted upon hearing Xianxia's icy refusal, but he didn't reveal the slightest bit of shock because he had long anticipated his reaction. Why? Huanzhi has already given you 80%. Could it be that you don't think it's enough? It has nothing to do with that, Xianxia said with sunken brows. I want to ask why, during the Battle of Ice Spirits, when there was barely any disparity between Huanzhi and Feixu, when the final outcome depended more on luck, why did none of you propose an additional test? When my ice spirit count completely surpassed Huanzhi, all of you forcibly declared Huanzhi to be the victor, and now, you all have yet again proposed an additional test. On what basis? This. Huanzhi was speechless for a period of time after being interrogated. Many different kinds of gazes concentrated on Xianxia's body. Most of them were ones of mockery and pity. Heh, I just knew that he doesn't dare to do it. An Ice Phoenix Palace disciple laughed lowly. Do you even have to ask? He doesn't even dare to go into the Heavenly Lake earlier, and you think he deserves to compare to senior brother Huanzhi. He obviously won't agree to it, and will just firmly latch on the previous result. Sigh. He just entered the divine way and actually dreams of being the sect master's direct disciple like a toad wishing to eat swan meat. Too laughable. Can't do anything about it. After all, being able to become the sect master's direct disciple is too great of an enticement. Anyone else would have refused it too if they were in his place. Many disciples sneered, and even Huanzhi shook his head and sighed inwardly. Give me 80%? Ha, what great courage, what a huge face. Xianxia completely disregarded the surrounding voices as he released the bellyful of barely suppressed rage he was previously holding back. So it can be fair to me, but this additional test is already unfair to me. This so-called fairness in giving me 80% is simply a joke. Why should I accept it? You all keep saying that it has to be fair and impartial, repeatedly saying that it's the sect's great matter, yet forcibly ignore the fact that I had already won against Huanzhi in the Battle of Ice Spirits, and you want an additional test. Is this Divine Ice Phoenix Sect's so-called fairness? Xianxia was clearly bellowing the last bit of his sentence. It was even aimed at all the elders and palace masters. The faces of all the various elders and palace masters changed at the same time. Mu Bingyun also revealed shock as she hurriedly said, Xianxia, stop! Insolence! The sound of anger instantly silenced the heavenly Netherfrost Lake. It was as though all the ice spirits on the surface of the lake were frozen as they all stopped in place. This one word caused the secretly sneering disciples to pale in fright. The elders and palace masters who were about to speak out hung their heads lightning quick and were quiet out of fear. It was because this angry rebuke had shockingly come from the Snow Song Realm King. Xianxia, this king has already consented to the additional test, so how can you refuse it? You are only a little disciple. Not only are you disobeying orders, you even have the audacity to say delirious ravings that disgrace the sect. Who gave you such guts? The temperature rapidly plummeted, and the still atmosphere became bone-piercingly cold. Since long ago, there has been a saying within Snow Song Realm, the Realm King's fury leaves none alive. The Snow Song Realm King was rarely angry, but every time she got angry, the consequences were extremely terrifying. Terrifying to the point where no one would dare think back to what had happened. Even those that had long resided in the upper echelons of the Ice Phoenix realm seldomly saw the Snow Song Realm King get angry, perhaps a few times in several thousand years. But today, because of a small Ice Phoenix Palace disciple who was even from the lower realms, she had actually gotten angry. Their hearts were all caught in their throats as all the hairs on their bodies stood on end. They were somewhat angry because of Xianxia's wild proclamations, but now they only had sympathy for him within their terror. Doomed, this kid is already doomed. Just please do not harm the fish in the lake. The angry rebuke that came from the Snow Song Realm King made Yuanqi felt like he had been smashed in the head by a heavy mountain, as all the bones in his body were on the brink of collapse. However, he forcibly lifted his head and slowly said in a determined voice, "You are the Snow Song Realm King, so you must do as you say. If I win, then I win. On what basis do I need to take this additional test?" Everyone present became dumbstruck. In front of the already angered Snow Song Realm King, he had actually answered back. He was definitely doomed this time, completely doomed for sure. Mu Bingyun's icy face had completely lost all color. She hurriedly came to Yuanqi's side and said, "Sect Master, Yuanqi's personality is just like that. He definitely doesn't mean to offend you, I beg Sect Master." Personality. The Snow Song Realm King's voice carried an extremely disdainful sneer. An ignorant junior who has just entered the divine way, someone who is as weak as an ant, actually dares to act up against me and actually dares to argue with me. Bingyu, the one person you have ever brought back from the lower realms, is actually an audaciously reckless fool. You want this king to do as she says. HMPH, with what ability? This king can say that she'll protect your family before slaughtering them in the next breath, but what can you possibly do to me? In my eyes, you are not even comparable to a little ant. Not to mention killing you. If this king wishes to destroy the planet you came from, it would only take a mere thought. Instead of treasuring your chance here, you actually dare act up in front of me. This kind of fool becoming an Ice Phoenix Palace disciple has already sullied the 36th Ice Phoenix Palace, yet he actually dares fantasize about becoming this king's disciple. Bang! Mu Bingyun heavily knelt on one knee and pleaded, "Sect Master, Yuanqi was brought here by me from the lower realms. He has a naturally unyielding temperament, and I never thought it was a bad thing, so I have never restricted him much. Everything is because I was incapable of disciplining him. I ask that Sect Master punish me instead and lighten his punishment. At the very least, leave him alive." When Yuanqi had caused trouble all the previous times, Mu Bingyun truly had never obstructed him. Instead, she had always been secretly protecting him because she somewhat admired Yuanqi's temperament. However, before they had entered the heavenly Netherfrost Lake, she had already severely warned Yuanqi that he mustn't go against the rules. She never expected that Yuanqi would still cause trouble, and even a huge disaster as well. He had actually angered the Realm King. Yuanqi had just arrived in the Snow Song realm, so he didn't understand the concept of angering the Realm King, and he had even talked back after she had gotten angry. As though many bucketfuls of cold water poured all over him, Yuanqi's body went ice cold, all the way to his soul. All the pride, arrogance, unyieldingness, and grievances completely dissipated. What replaced it was only a sudden, ice-cold awakening as well as genuine terror. The scene of when he had made Jasmine his master back then flashed in his mind. At that time, he was conceited and prideful, determined not to kneel, yet was then stepped on the head by Jasmine, thus completing the discipleship rites. That time's taunting words also distinctly rang in his ear. "Did you think that you have great integrity, that you are extraordinary? Without strength, you don't even have the ability to refuse to kowtow to me. What right do you have to act haughty in front of me? Without strength, your pride and dignity are nothing but a joke in front of the strong." Yuanqi sucked in a deep breath. When it entered his chest, the cold passed through his entire body. On the blue pole star, he stood at its summit so he was able to do as he pleased. He was able to do anything without limits and was able to act according to his temperament without restraint, because he had absolute strength. But here, before the Snow Song Realm King who was strong enough to rule this world, what was he? Forget about a firmament-like existence like the Snow Song Realm King. Even if it were these elders, palace masters, or the disciples here, how many of them truly respected him? Why would they disregard his ice spirit count and declare Huanzhi the victor? Because he was weak. Because in the eyes of everyone here, he wasn't even worthy of being compared to Huanzhi. Why did they want an additional test? Because he was too weak. Because nobody believed that he deserved to become the sect master's direct disciple. If he had sufficiently high strength, how could he possibly have to take a so-called additional test? In their eyes, the unyieldingness, arrogance, and dignity he thought he had really was just a joke to them. His resistance, even if it was completely logical, only attracted their mockery and disdain instead of their approval. Where in the world was he qualified to argue with the Realm King with confidence? The only consequence would just be him courting death. In the end, He had even burdened Mu Bingyun, making her plead for mercy while kneeling for his sake. The Snow Song Realm King saying that he was an extreme fool was right. Yuanqi, quick, quick, admit your mistake and beg for forgiveness, quick. Mu Xiaolan had long been frightened pale. Before the Snow Song Realm King's anger, she still loyally roused a never-before-seen courage in order to send Yuanqi a sound transmission. The reactions of the surrounding crowd also made Yuanqi aware of how huge of a disaster he had caused this time. Even though he had saved Mu Bingyun, what kind of an existence was the Snow Song Realm King? If she wanted to kill him, even if she killed him 10,000 times over, it wouldn't take any effort. I can't die, I haven't even seen Jasmine, so how can I possibly die here? With a bang, Yuanqi also heavily knelt beside Mu Bingyun. He lowered his head deeply. This disciple has made a presumption remark. I ask Sect Master to forgive me. A disciple kneeling to the great realm king ought to be a matter of course, but no one knew that aside from his parents, Jasmine was the only person Yuanqi had ever kneeled to in his entire life. The silence in the heavenly Netherfrost Lake was frightening. Not even the sound of breathing or anyone's heart pulsing could be heard. The crowd all contained one thought: forgive my ass. If you're able to keep your corpse intact after angering the sect master, I'll take on your surname. You ought to have died 10,000 times over, but since Bingyun is this king's young sister, on behalf of her seeking forgiveness for you, this king will grant you a chance to live. Each of the Snow Song Realm King's words held heavenly might. In the match between you and Mu Hanni, if you win, not only will I spare your life, I will also let everything be bygones and accept you as my direct disciple. But if you lose, you will no longer exist in the Snow Song Realm. The Snow Song Realm King's first few words shocked the crowd, but then the following words made them all understand that, as expected, it was impossible for the sect master to forgive anyone who had angered her. Everyone in the entire sect knew that she was extremely protective of Mu Bingyun, but this so-called chance to live was only her showing consideration for her feelings. In the end, she still wanted Yuanqi to die. After all, how could Yuanqi possibly beat Mu Hanni? All of the various elders and palace masters secretly relaxed as they all lifted their heads to wipe away the cold sweat on their foreheads. Even though Yuanqi was bound for certain death, it had at least not implicated them along with him. Beneath the sect master's anger, this was already extraordinary luck. Mu Bingyun quickly said, "Sect master, this. Say no more." The Snow Song Realm King's stern voice interrupted Mu Bingyun. "Yuanqi, this is the only chance you have to live. You can accept this, or this king can also annihilate you right now." Having learned from experience, Yuanqi said without hesitation, "Yes, I will obey the sect master's orders." "HMPH, Huanzhi, go arrange their match," commanded the Snow Song Realm King. "Yes, sect master." Mu Huanzhi's voice was even more cautious than it was before. He carefully straightened his back and raised a hand, not daring to make any delays. "Hanni, Yuanqi, follow me to the Heavenly Lake." Chapter 990, Heavenly Lake Goddess. 1. Mu Huanzhi brought Yuanqi and Mu Hanni above the center of the Heavenly Lake. He reached out a hand to press on their foreheads. When he released his hand, an ice blue-colored crystal was in each of his palms. Soul crystals that had merged with Yuanqi and Mu Hanni's soul strength. Mu Huanzhi turned around and waved his hands. An enormous blue light screen spread before them, and the two soul crystals also simultaneously embedded themselves on the light screen on opposing sides. These are your soul crystals that have linked with your souls. The state of your soul and how deep you have submerged within will all be displayed on this profound formation. Mu Huanzhi moved back. "Which one of you will go first?" This was a great sectoral matter that decided the sect master's direct disciple. Aside from those three, all others stayed by the lakeside. Not a single person approached above the Heavenly Lake to watch. This was because to them this wasn't even a competition. It was simply Mu Hanni's solo performance. They didn't even need to see or think about what the outcome would be. The only thing they somewhat paid attention to was whether Mu Hanni, who was about to soon become the sect master's direct disciple, was able to display an even more shocking performance. Mu Hanni modestly stated, "Junior brother Yuanqi, you go first." Yuanqi declined without the slightest bit of hesitation. "Since I only need to reach 20% of senior brother Hanni's score, I need to use senior brother Hanni as reference. In that case, senior brother Hanni ought to go first." "Hanni, you go first," said Mu Huanzhi. In everyone's eyes, Yuanqi obviously didn't dare, and it was impossible for him to dare do that. "Yes," Mu Hanni respectfully followed the order. He took a step forward and slowly breathed in for a long period of time. While doing that, he closed his eyes and a thin layer of blue light shimmered around his body, quickly becoming thicker. The heavenly Netherfrost Lake was still terrifyingly quiet. Everyone's gaze concentrated on Huanzi's body and occasionally shifted toward Xianxia with pity in their eyes. The blue light on Huanzi's body had become extremely dense, taking on the shape of a beautiful ring of light. It was at this time that he suddenly opened his eyes as it quickly dropped down, directly into the heavenly lake. On the light screen, Huanzi's soul crystal sparkled, giving off a rapidly increasing specks of light, 10 feet, 30 feet, 50 feet, 100 feet. He was fast, as though he was going through normal water. In the blink of an eye, he was already 100 feet deep. Fast? Even though they were sure that Huanzi's performance would be astounding, the disciples who had personally experienced the heavenly lake's water still widened their eyes in shock. 100 feet of coldness actually didn't affect him at all. 150 feet, 200 feet, 300 feet, all of the disciples were dumbstruck. When he had reached 300 feet, Huanzi's speed had finally slowed, but it was only somewhat slow, which still made it astonishing. Huanzi continuously nodded as he looked at the light screen. Even though Huanzi had defeated his own granddaughter, Huanzi still couldn't help but praise him inwardly. Xianxia gently closed his eyes, not having taken a single glance at the light screen since the very start. He was expressionless, and it was not known what he was thinking about. On the lakeside, Bingyun also closed her eyes. Her profound energy carried her soul voice and traveled toward the distant skies above. Elder sister, you couldn't possibly have gotten angry because of this. What exactly happened? Do you really intend to kill Xianxia? Bingyun was the only person in the world who understood her the most. HMPH. He saved your life, so I obviously won't kill him, but I really did get angry. A heavy, thunder-like voice replied back in Bingyun's head. This voice caused Bingyun to relax somewhat, but she became even more puzzled afterwards. Then what exactly made you angry? This kid is full of flaws. He revealed the star god's broken shadow and then revealed the evil god's inheritance. If it wasn't me but someone else who discovered all of this, he would have already died a myriad number of times. Even the planet on which he had been born would have drowned in great misfortune, yet he himself is totally oblivious of this fact. He even showed conceit and arrogance before someone he couldn't afford to offend at all. This excessive insolence is simply just too stupid. Did he really think that he was still in the lower realms? How could I not get angry? Bingyun's face changed abruptly as she suddenly raised her head. Evil god's inheritance. Elder sister, what do you mean? The evil god, a supreme god during the primordial times of the era of gods who possessed the highest creation god tier divine power. One of the 4 strongest peerless gods. His inheritance, Bingyun suddenly thought of something at this time, and her icy blue eyes instantly contracted. Could it be? There's no need to ask any more, just continue watching and see for yourself. The anger in the heavy voice still had yet to dissipate. HMPH, it's his good luck that he encountered me. He wouldn't know how he died otherwise. This can be considered his first lesson. The waves in Bingyun's heart billowed, and she found it hard to calm down. The evil god's inheritance. In the god realm, there had never been an inheritance at the creation god level. As for the records pertaining to the evil god, it mentioned that he used to be called the god of the elements. As for the recent rumors concerning the evil god, 8 years ago, Star God Realm's Heavenly Slaughter Star God seemed to have obtained some kind of evil god power. Star God's broken shadow. Heavenly Slaughter Star God. Evil God's power. Xianxia, Blue Pole Star. Absolute God slaying poison. Sky Poison Pearl, 8 years. An odd innate talent. Forcibly learning the Ice Phoenix God investiture canon without the Ice Phoenix bloodline. Possessing both the divine power of ice and fire was actually. No wonder, no wonder. Does this mean that you really are going to accept him as a disciple? You should know that he won't stay in the snow song realm for long. Bingyun did not receive a reply after her question. The profound light cast by the light screen was still increasing rapidly, bringing about startled shouts as it did. 500 feet, 600 feet, 700 feet, 800 feet. Once the projection reached 800 feet, the cries by the lakeside immediately exploded. The disciples who were originally sitting down all stood up, staring at the light screen with stupefied expressions. 800 feet. This kind of distance could be instantly covered by profound practitioners in the divine way. However, this kind of depth for the heavenly Netherfrost Lake was in fact an extremely terrifying number. even though those at the scene were Divine Ice Phoenix Sect's top disciples. It was not exaggerated to say that around half of them would die with no chance of a struggle if they were to touch cold energy of that depth. Yet Huanzhi still continued downward without any indication that he was going to stop. 820 feet, 850 feet, 880 feet, 900 feet. The shouting had disappeared as all the disciples held their breaths while staring wide-eyed. Even the various elders and palace masters revealed deep shock on their faces. Only Huanzhi was smiling, because she knew that this still wasn't Huanzhi's limit. At this point, Huanzhi's speed became even slower, but he still continued downward. 920 feet, 940 feet, 950 feet. With each passing foot, his speed would decrease, but he never truly stopped. All eyes were firmly fixed on the light screen. They were witnessing history in the making from a disciple. Every instant after 900 feet was history in the making. 970 feet, 980 feet, 990 feet. The rate at which Huanzhi descended was now extremely slow. Every inch he took seemed as though he was crossing through an insurmountable chasm. The crowd's heartbeats also slowed along with him. They all stared with wide eyes, fearing that they would miss even a single moment. 1,000 feet. The shock this time was intense, as though a heavy hammer smashed the souls of everyone present. Even Huanzhi, who was the closest to the light screen, stared for a long while. Huanzhi had finally reached his limits 1,000 feet below the water. He only stayed at 1,000 feet for half a breath before he began to struggle upward. It was just that his ascension speed was extremely slow. On the light screen, the light that Huanzhi's soul crystal released also began to become disorderly. "Quick, go save Huanzhi," Huanzhi shouted with urgency. Huanzhi didn't need her reminder, as he had already moved lightning quick. A boundless, profound energy directly pierced through 1,000 feet of lake water and enveloped Huanzhi's body before quickly bringing him up. Once the lake's surface broke open, Huanzhi's figure was flung into the distance, landing beside the lake. His face was pale white, his aura was weak, and his entire body violently trembled, but he still struggled to get up and salute Huanzhi. "Disciple, thanks great elder for saving his life." Huanzhi immediately came over and pressed her hand on his back, helping him disperse the cold energy. "Ha ha ha ha!" Huanzhi gave a hearty laugh. As expected of the most outstanding disciple of this generation. One of them, I mean. You actually reached 1,000 feet. If I think back to our generation, there was not a single person below the age of 60, among those who were fortunate enough to enter the heavenly lake, that were able to reach 1,000 feet. This is absolutely joyous. Senior brother Huanzhi, congratulations. Huanzhi becoming the direct disciple can't be even more suitable. Huanzhi's desperately doing his best was obviously so he could display himself in front of the Realm King, and he had actually done it spectacularly. His innate talent was high, his constitution was great, and his attainment in the laws of ice was profound. He had deeply astounded everyone present. Many elders looked at Huanzhi with envious gazes. "Huanzhi, don't become distracted. Use your all to disperse the cold energy first. After a while, you'll have to pay respects to the sect master again, and you mustn't be the least bit uncourteous." Huanzhi didn't hesitate to mobilize all the profound energy in her body to allow Huanzhi to recover sufficiently in a short period of time. "Yes, master." Huanzhi also closed his eyes, suppressing the extreme excitement he had in his heart. He began to do his utmost to expel the cold, and was already thinking about what he should say when he was going to pay his respects to the sect master a while later. Everyone's attention concentrated upon the body of the glowing Huanzhi. It was as though Xianxia, who was still standing at the lake's center, had been forgotten. "Xianxia, it's your turn," Huanzhi said. This instantly reminded everyone that there was another person in this match. Huanzhi went down a total of 1,000 feet. You only need to reach 20% of his depth, so 200 feet will suffice. When Huanzhi finished saying this, the lakeside immediately became a field of snickers. 200 feet? What a joke! Reaching 7 feet was probably his limit. This was because Xianxia was only a bit more than 7 feet. Anyone was able to imagine the only thing that would happen once he entered the heavenly Netherfrost Lake, which was the profound energy in his entire body immediately freezing, and then him not being able to move anymore. Xianxia took a step forward. Without saying a single word or channeling profound energy, he dropped into the heavenly lake just like that. From this, everyone saw that he clearly given up because no matter how much he struggled, it would have been useless. At the same time he fell, Huanzhi also reached out a hand. prepared to save him after he had been frozen by the lake water. After all, he had angered the sect master. Even if he was doomed to die, his death ought to be decided by the sect master herself. However, once he reached out a hand, his face had stiffened at the same time. Huanzhi, who had fallen into the heavenly lake, did not immediately freeze as he had anticipated. Instead, when he went down, though the speed in which he descended fell short of Huanzhi's, it couldn't be considered slow. Chapter 991, Heavenly Lake Goddess 2, 10 feet, 20 feet, 30 feet. Beneath everyone's dumbstruck gaze, Huanzhi directly dove down to 30 feet at a constant rate. Inside the heavenly lake, Huanzhi closed his eyes. The inconceivably heavy cold energy made him feel extremely comfortable and refreshed. He spread his arms and greedily felt the countless strands and cool currents pour into his body, allowing his body to freely sink. He was so comfortable that he nearly wanted to fall asleep right there. As he had expected, this feeling was the same as what he had felt when he sank into the illusory demon realm's sea of death. It was just a bit more intense. After all, the power level of the heavenly Netherfrost Lake far surpassed that of the Sea of Death. And following his gradual submergence, the cold energy also gradually became heavier. To others, the heavenly lake's cold energy was a nightmare. However, this kind of peak elemental environment was compatible with the great way of the Buddha. To Huanzhi, it was paradise. In this kind of environment, even if he didn't do anything, his profound strength would quickly increase. While enjoying himself, he had already casually sunk down 50 feet. This was also reflected upon the light screen, causing multiple mouths to gape in astonishment. The peculiar atmosphere and sounds in his surroundings made Huanzhi, who was currently dispersing the cold energy from his body, to open his eyes. In a single glance, he saw that the depth to which Huanzhi had submerged had already reached 50 feet on the light screen. Even though the speed was extremely slow, and was the difference between the heaven and earth compared to Huanzhi's 1,000 feet, it had already completely torn apart their imaginations. What's this? This isn't possible. Many disciples looked at each other in dismay. Amidst their shock, Huanzhi still continued to steadily go down 60 feet, 80 feet, 100 feet. The various elders and palace masters also began to look at each other. Mu Bingyun stared fixedly at the light screen the entire time. If not for the sound transmission she had received earlier, she would have also been in shock. Even though she knew what was coming, the tides in her heart were still hard to quell. 120 feet, 140 feet, turmoil finally appeared within Huanzhi's eyes. His aura, which he had just managed to stabilize, now showed signs of disorder. Whether it was he or the Huanzhi beside him, both began feeling uneasy due to their immense shock. 150 feet. At this time, Huanzhi finally stopped. The light screen stopped, causing Huanzhi to fiercely suck in a huge breath. His entire body was already covered with cold sweat. None of them would have imagined that Huanzhi, who had just entered the Divine Way and previous didn't even dare step into the heavenly lake, would be able to reach such a depth. The shock and incredulity brought about by this scene was not inferior to when Huanzhi had reached 1,000 feet. With profound strength at the first level of the divine origin realm, he was actually able to dive to such a depth. Were his innate talent, constitution, and attainments in the laws actually this strong? Huanzhi did indeed stop inside the heavenly lake, but it wasn't because he was unable to go down any further. In fact, he didn't even know how far down he was at the moment and was just hesitating. The deeper he went, the heavier the cold energy got, and to his water spirit evil body, even if the cold energy was heavier, it still wouldn't be able to harm him. Instead, it was able to allow him to absorb even more energy. In that case, if he went to the deepest part of the lake, which was where the cold energy was the heaviest, was it possible for him to not need to cultivate and only rely on this extreme cold energy to reach the divine tribulation realm before the profound God convention? Except, Huanzhi continued to hesitate for several breaths, but in the end, he fiercely gritted his teeth and suddenly dove. Clang! The blue light atop the light screen, which had stilled for several breaths, suddenly increased sharply, flying upward like a ray of light. In an instant, it flew to 300 feet from 150 feet, and in the next instant, it reached 500 feet. Huanzhi, who was standing before the light screen, felt as though someone had hit him with a heavy hammer. He swayed beneath his shock as all the hairs on his body stood on end. The lakeside had exploded into a field of throat-ripping clamor. Numerous chins fiercely dropped to the floor as the eyeballs of everyone present nearly shot out of their sockets, with the same speed of that beam of light. Huanzhi, who was currently sitting on the ground, suddenly sat up, as though he had gotten electrocuted. His complexion stiffened, and his gaze became dazed. It felt as though he had suddenly fallen into an incredibly absurd dream. Huanzhi continued his dive, and not only did he not slow down, he had instead sped up, becoming faster and faster, 700 feet, 1,000 feet, before everyone regained their senses after seeing the light beam's drastic increase. It had yet again risen to 1,000 feet before diving even deeper, immediately surpassing Huanzhi's previous outstanding achievement. 2,000 feet, 4,000 feet, 7,000 feet, 10,000 feet. A streak of blue light suddenly shot downward from above the enormous frost dragon, striking the light screen. The entire light screen instantly scattered into blue-colored fragments, and only left behind 2 floating soul crystals that emitted a blue light. The heavenly Netherfrost Lake was once more a field of silence. It was as though everyone had fallen into a dream. Huanzhi turned around. His pupils were still contracted in shock, and his voice also trembled slightly amidst his shock. "Sect Master TT, this? The winner has already been decided. There is no need to watch any further," the Snow Song Realm King said coldly. Her sharp might, which pierced through the souls of others, told them that everything they had seen was not a dream but reality. Huanzhi sat on the ground with a deathly white face and trembling lips, feeling at a loss for a long time. If he had been defeated by Mu Feixu at the very start, he wouldn't have been this lost. In fact, he might have even been able to display enough calmness. But at this time, it was as though he had suddenly been dropped from heaven into hell. The disparity was so great that it was cruel. Huanzhi, who was standing beside him, looked petrified. Like Huanzhi, her lips were also trembling violently and didn't stop for a while. She was unable to say anything out loud. But Huanzhi wanted to say something, but he couldn't seem to say it out loud. "What but?" The Snow Song Realm King's voice suddenly grew louder, startling everyone into trembling. The result of this additional exam is already clear. Huanzhi has already defeated Huanzhi, so he is exempt from his previous offense and is allowed to become this king's direct disciple. 7 days from now, the entire sect will gather at the Divine Hall, thus commencing the discipleship ceremony. Huanzhi, you will be in charge of arranging all this, and not a single error is permitted. Before anyone truly regained their senses and accepted what had happened earlier, the Snow Song Realm King had already directly declared her decision. Huanzhi was stunned for several breaths before he hurriedly replied, "Yes. Bingyun, have Huanzhi stay in the 36th Ice Phoenix Palace for the next few days." "Yes," Bingyun gently replied. Behind her, Xiaolan had long been stunned so badly she resembled a block of wood. Just as Bingyun replied, an angry and also deeply grudging voice sounded beside her ears. "This brat, he had just been taught a lesson, yet he still behaves this unrestrainedly. I seriously want to slap him to death." Bingyun smiled lightly and transmitted back. If something like nature was able to be changed that easily, it wouldn't be nature anymore. Evil God means an indiscriminate God. If he truly did inherit the evil God's power, then his nature may perhaps be related to that. Forget it. Since fate has decreed it so, I will abide by heaven's will and accepted him as my disciple. I just wonder whether his power and temperament is a blessing or a calamity to our Snow Song realm. The entire heavenly Netherfrost Lake filled with a dumbstruck atmosphere, yet the main offender of it all was still within the heavenly lake. At this time, Huanzhi suddenly stood out and said while trembling, "Sect Master, Huanzhi has something to say. The matter of Huanzhi winning against Huanzhi is just too odd." Furthermore, no one had ever dared to go against the Snow Song Realm King's decisions. Huanzhi saying all that directly overdrafted all the courage she possessed in her lifetime. The profound God convention is in 2 years. If Huanzhi becomes the direct disciple and receives Sect Master's instruction, he will definitely bring glory to our Snow Song realm. As for Huanzhi, his profound strength is just too low. Not only will he not qualify to participate in the profound God convention when the time comes, I'm afraid that it might attract criticism from outside. After Huanzhi said all this, she was covered with sweat and nearly collapsed. She was practically risking her life for this last chance. "Oh, are you saying that you feel that this king's decision was foolish?" The Snow Song Realm King's voice was extremely indifferent without any trace of anger, yet it shocked Huanzhi so much that she fiercely kneeled. She said with a quaking body, "No, Huanzhi wouldn't dare. Huanzhi has said too much. I ask Sect Master for forgiveness." "Then that's good," the Snow Song Realm King indifferently answered. The crowd below her held their breaths every time she spoke, not daring to breathe at all. "And here I thought that you'd gotten tired of living." Mu Yunzhi's body swayed, almost as if she was going to crumple to the ground. Everyone deeply lowered their heads, not daring to utter a single sound. Since an outcome has already been decided, then today's Heavenly Lake gathering should now end. A sky-covering command filled with heavenly might then came down. "Fengshu Sushin, you two wait outside the Heavenly Lake. Without this king's order, you are not permitted to leave. As for the rest, you will all leave. No one is allowed to remain. In addition, the matter of this king accepting a disciple is not to be spread outside before the discipleship ceremony in 7 days." Both Mu Fengshu and Mu Sushin revealed shocked expressions. They were rarely summoned by the Snow Song Realm King, perhaps once in several hundred years. Yet this time, both of them were told to stay. Could it be for some great freezing snow hall matter? Terrified, the duo naturally did not dare to ask about it as they agreed with lowered heads. Amidst the silence, this Heavenly Lake gathering, that had progressed outside of everyone's expectations, came to an end within a strange atmosphere. Disciples of the Divine Hall and Ice Phoenix Palace neatly departed from the Heavenly Netherfrost Lake with their elders and palace masters in the lead. The Heavenly Netherfrost Lake's barrier slowly closed with only Mu Fengshu and Mu Sushin restlessly remaining outside the barrier. The Snow Song Realm King remained in the skies above the Heavenly Netherfrost Lake, having not left yet. She silently watched the calm surface of the Heavenly Lake, and no one knew what this mighty and merciless Snow Song Realm King was thinking. Below the Heavenly Netherfrost Lake, 15,000 feet, 20,000 feet, 30,000 feet, 40,000 feet, 50,000 feet. A crystalline blue light suddenly appeared in the underwater world, which was supposed to be completely devoid of light. Yuanqi's mind jolted. Then he quickly composed himself as went down for a look, and no less than 1,000 feet beneath his feet was astonishingly the imprint of a strangely shaped blue-colored arcing light. That's the cold vein. The cold vein Mu Bingyun had said to be at the bottom of the Heavenly Lake. He had already reached the bottom of the Heavenly Lake. Yuanqi's speed instantly slowed. It was 50,000 feet beneath the Heavenly Netherfrost Lake, yet he somehow miraculously couldn't sense any water pressure. The cold energy here was also terrifying to the point where it couldn't be described with the word heavy. After all, this cold vein, which didn't seem to even reach 1,000 meters, brought severe coldness to the entire Snow Song realm. The cold spiritual energy flowed into his body like a windstorm. The rate at which his evil god's profound veins and rage god's power absorbed it was naturally at his upper limits. When he reached 5,000 feet, his absorption speed had already reached its limits. On the way down, his absorption speed continued to maintain that limit without the slightest hint of change. The lake water was clear, and borrowing the blue light of the cold vein, everything in the surroundings became visible. Aside from the crystalline cold vein, nothing else was present in his line of sight. It was incomparably pure. Down here, even if I don't do anything, 1 year is able to beat 10 years of other people's hard-working cultivation. It's just that. Yuanqi sighed inwardly. Wanting to reach the divine tribulation realm in 2 years is still impossible like this. The only person who was able to think of a way was the Snow Song Realm King, who was in the terrifying Divine Master realm. Once he had this thought, Yuanqi no longer stayed and intended to ascend upward. But it was at this time that he saw an odd light suddenly flash from the corner of his eyes. "What's that?" Yuanqi stopped to a halt as his gaze shifted toward the source of the light. Chapter 992, Heavenly Lake Goddess, 3. As he quickly neared, the light also became even more lustrous. It was absolutely not him just seeing things. Broken pieces of sand began appearing on the bottom of the Heavenly Lake. Each one was translucent and bright, like pearls as they reflected a dreamy blue light. Yuanqi took a few of them in hand and had no doubt that the cold energy within them was able to instantly freeze 5,000 kilometers of sea area. After passing through the jewel-like broken sand, he came closer and closer to that exceptionally bright blue light. Yuanqi had also accelerated quite a bit yet again, and was soon able to see that it was astonishingly a block of ice. Ice, within this heavenly lake water, which had never frozen before due to the terrifying cold energy it possessed. How could there be a block of ice? From a distance, he was able to see that the block of ice was shaped like a diamond. Having not yet reached 3 feet wide and 10 feet long, it was positioned right in the center of the Heavenly Lake's cold vein. Even though it was floating within the water, It was so peaceful that it felt as though it was embedded in a world of ice. After seeing the block of ice, Yuanqi approached slowly, yet his eyes slightly dulled. Because there was actually a person inside the ice, the illusory figure of a girl. The girl's arms were wrapped around her knees, and her head was buried between her knees too, hugging herself into a ball. She was completely naked, exposing long, white legs and feet as delicate as lotuses. Her naked skin looked as sparkly and glossy as the light of moons and stars, even through a wall of ice. Her long hair spread down her body, and every hair looked as white as ice, tinged with a tiny bit of light blue. It looked very similar to that seductive woman who called herself Mu Xuanian. Every one of her hairs looked like they were enveloped in the cold light of ice and snow. The hair that looked like ice jade covered up her face and her most forbidden private parts too. Yuanqi stared blankly at the girl. She looked as beautiful as a painting that could only appear inside a dream. Although he couldn't see her face, there was no doubt that a dreamlike body like this could only be matched by a countenance that would make even ice and snow hang their proverbial heads in shame. Who was this girl? Why was she sealed in ice beneath this heavenly lake? How long had she been sealed here? 100 years? 1,000 years? 10,000 years? Or even longer than that? Did Divine Ice Phoenix Sect do this? The only people who could approach the heavenly Netherfrost Lake were members of Divine Ice Phoenix Sect. Could it be that this girl was a very important figure of Divine Ice Phoenix Sect from a certain time, who was sealed in ice and submerged into this lake to preserve her remains permanently? Wait, with snow song realms, weather, and divine way-level frost profound energy, there was no need to submerge a body in the heavenly Netherfrost Lake to preserve a body at all. Not to mention that contamination of the heavenly Netherfrost Lake was absolutely forbidden. Moreover, the heavenly Netherfrost Lake was no ordinary lake at all. Any objects that were submerged into the heavenly Netherfrost Lake would be annihilated into nothingness by its terrifying cold energy instead of sinking to the bottom. But this ice and the girl inside the ice were perfectly intact. They were actually not affected by the cold energy of this place at all. Yuanqi attempted to move closer until he was right in front of the ice. The icy, jade-like skin that was just inches away from him actually caused him to look away subconsciously. He didn't dare blaspheme the girl's beautiful body with his eyes. He slowly stretched out his palm and touched the ice. Ding, a small blue flash appeared where his fingers and the ice touched. There were no other abnormalities except the blue flash. He hadn't detected any life or soul auras either. Who was she, and why was she here? Great curiosity and puzzlement were occupying his mind, but he couldn't find any answers at all inside this cold and quiet lake bottom. Yuanqi hadn't forgotten his current situation either. He backed away a few steps and finally looked away entirely. He had already experienced the Snow Song Realm King's cold-heartedness and tyranny once. If all he wanted to do was to prove himself to her, then he only needed to go below 300 meters. But because he was too anxious to find a way to increase his profound energy at top speed, and because of his own curiosity regarding the bottom of the heavenly Netherfrost Lake, he had taken a great risk and sank to the bottom of the lake. If the Snow Song Realm King decided that he had stayed too long beneath the lake, considering her temperament, the consequences were unimaginable. Yuanqi inhaled slightly and was ready to leave the place, but suddenly, a girl's voice rang in the depths of his soul. "Who are you? Why are you able to come here?" This voice felt as pure and intangible as a clear spring that flowed through the center one's heart. Yuanqi abruptly stiffened before turning back around as quick as lightning. He stared straight at the frozen girl and asked, "Are you talking to me?" Earlier, he had scanned this place and found no traces of life or soul aura inside the ice at all. But she was also the only thing that existed in this place besides him. She also said, "Here," earlier. The girl didn't answer, but the surrounding waters of the heavenly Netherfrost Lake suddenly shook slightly. A divine consciousness that was as gentle as water enveloped Yuanqi entirely. Yuanqi didn't resist, because not only was this divine consciousness completely friendly and kind, it was also so vast and boundless that he was completely powerless against it. At the bottom of the heavenly lake and inside the ice, not only did this girl possess a consciousness of her own, her divine consciousness was also absolutely terrifying. Just who was she? In a flash, the tremendous divine consciousness left Yuanqi's body, and the girl's voice rang inside his soul once more. "Ah, you inherited the evil god's power. No wonder you can make your way to this place." Yuanqi abruptly looked up. "Are you the Ice Phoenix's divine spirit?" She was able to identify the power of the evil god inside him just by scanning his aura. The only beings who were able to do this were souls who possessed the memories of ancient true gods like the Phoenix, the Dragon God, and the Golden Crow. The young girl didn't reply and fell into a long, long period of silence instead. Then she asked softly all of a sudden, "Can I look at your memories?" Although the divine souls Yuanqi had encountered all had a personality of their own, they all carried themselves with the tall pride of a god. This being, that might very well be the Ice Phoenix's soul, had not only spoken to him, a rude intruder, as gently as water, she was even asking his permission politely and sincerely. In comparison, the Golden Crow's spirit had violently read through his memories by force. The infinitely vast divine consciousness that appeared earlier proved that the girl before him might very well be the Ice Phoenix's soul. Her soul power was much stronger than the Golden Crow's soul, and it would be mere child's play for her to forcefully read his memories against his will. But her tone was that of a gentle inquiry. Okay, to allow another person to read his memories was the equivalent of exposing all of his secrets. It was a taboo that no one could accept, but Yuanqi had no choice but to accept it. The water rippled, and the vast divine consciousness enveloped Yuanqi once more, slowly and softly entering into the depths of his soul. Yuanqi's mind immediately turned blank. An unknown period of time later, Yuanqi regained his consciousness little by little. That divine consciousness was long gone. Blue Pole Star, the Phoenix, the Dragon God, the Golden Crow, the Sky Poison Pearl, the Mirror of Samsara, Moon Slaughter, Devil Sovereign, the young girl muttered softly. To think that so many things have happened to you in such a short lifetime. You haven't answered my question. Are you the Ice Phoenix's soul? Yuanqi persisted in his question. I am and I am not. Huh, her answer puzzled Yuanqi. I am different from the Phoenix, Dragon God, and Golden Crow's souls you've met earlier. They are soul fragments that have remained in the world in hopes of passing down their powers after their own deaths. I, too, have separated a part of my soul, but that soul fragment disappeared a long time ago after it had passed down its final strength and bloodline to the Snow Song realm. Then, you are. The me before you is that soul fragment's master. The girl's voice was still as unbelievably soft as ever. A blank moment later, Yuanqi's face abruptly changed as he exclaimed, You are the Ice Phoenix. She was not a soul fragment, but the master of the fragment itself. This also meant that she was the divine spirit itself, the one and only Ice Phoenix. She was a true god who survived to this day. The Moon Slaughter Devil Sovereign was a true devil who lived, until the moment he was killed by him with the heaven-smiting sword, but now he had also encountered a living true god who survived to this day. There is no need for surprise. The young girl knew what he was thinking. I may still exist, but I am incomparable to the Moon Slaughter Devil Sovereign you encountered. He may have had the possibility of recovering one day, but I can only preserve the tiniest shreds of my life source and soul source. Not only can I never recover, but I may never be able to leave this cold vein either. I cannot even return to my true body and have no choice but to maintain the shape of a human. There is but a little margin between me and true death. So you mean you've been here for more than 1,000,000 years? Yuanqi was still shocked beyond words. He could hardly calm himself down. Even if she possessed only the tiniest shreds of her life source and soul source, she was still a true god who hadn't perished entirely, a true god. She was completely different from the fragments of divine spirits he met previously. She was a completely different level of existence. Yes, before I knew it, 1,000,000 years have passed since that disaster. More than once have I wished to die and end my petty life in eternal loneliness. The hope to see with my own eyes whether that day will arrive has kept me from doing so. Day? Which day? Yuanqi was puzzled. That day hasn't arrived even though I've waited 1,000,000 years. But you did. I suppose this is the plan of fate. No, this is the evil god's guidance. He gave up his divine title as a creation god and was dubbed the most heretical and lonely god in the world. But just how many know that he was actually the greatest of all the gods? The young girl seemed to be talking to both him and herself. Yuanqi was completely confused by her erratic statements. Yuanqi, the young girl said his name softly. The power of the evil god you now bear comes from a single drop of the evil god's indestructible blood. His power is different from the rest of the divine powers you've gotten. For although the divine power of the Phoenix, the Dragon God, and the Golden Crow inside your body all came from a tiny amount of divine blood, the indestructible blood of the evil god has nurtured an entirely perfect set of evil god profound veins in you. It is also the complete source of power of the evil god, The meaning it represents is completely different from the other divine powers you possess. Yuan-Chi nodded. He understood this perfectly. His power had always been based around the power of the evil god, and the reason the rest of his divine powers were able to coexist with each other and unleash power beyond their limits was completely thanks to the evil god's profound veins. Do you know how hard it was for the evil god to leave behind this drop of indestructible blood? Not only did he need to eliminate himself entirely, he had to pay the price of at least 600,000 years of lifespan too. This means that the evil god could have lived on for another 600,000 years with his tremendous divine power, even though he was infected with myriad tribulations. But he gave up on the chance to live another 600,000 years with his divine power under the trappings of myriad tribulations, and invested all of his divine power and life force into creating that indestructible drop of evil god blood. This was all for the sake of leaving behind the source of his power. Even towards the end of his life, the evil god was only worried about the arrival of that day, going so far as to give up his life in order to leave behind one final hope to the future. Perhaps he was the only person worthy of being called the greatest of all gods. I can't understand what you're saying at all. What exactly do you mean by that day? And why did the evil god forcefully leave behind a complete version of his source of power? Since she was talking about the evil god, it had to be related to him somehow, but that didn't change the fact that he seriously couldn't understand a thing the girl had said. Alishu, it's pretty hard to change it here because there are so many instances of evil god. But when we go into publication, we're most definitely going to call him the heretic god in the ebook. We'll probably try to find some time tomorrow to type up a recruitment notice, since we're severely understaffed for ATG. Chapter 993, Only Hope. In your memories, there are some rumors from the ancient era of gods. Included among them is the insider's secret of heaven punishing Divine Emperor banishing a devil emperor, as well as 900 devil gods under their command outside of the primal chaos. Yuan-Chi nodded. These words were spoken to him by the Golden Crow's soul back then. Moe used the ancestral divine arts fragment as bait and lured the devil emperor with the excuse of studying the ancestral divine art together. Then Moe used the heaven-punishing ancestral sword and blew open the wall of primal chaos, blasting both that devil emperor and all the devil gods outside of the primal chaos. Yet outside of the primal chaos was an eternity of nothingness. One would never be able to come back after falling outside. Perhaps the only result would be turning into nothingness within the nothingness. Then did you know, why would heaven-punishing Divine Emperor Moe forcefully slew that devil emperor? The girl's voice was feeble and gentle, as though soft whispers under the moon. Yuan-Chi pondered for a bit. Back then, Golden Crow's soul told me that heaven-punishing Divine Emperor Moe was incomparably upright and abhorred evil, and thought that ones who used negative, profound energy were all evil existences. Since the fragment of the ancestral divine art was left behind by the ancestral god at the beginning of primal chaos, it definitely couldn't be left in the hands of the devil race. Thus, he forcibly seized it in such a way. Sigh, the girl sighed lightly, revealing the feeling of resignation from the ancient times. Back then, it was indeed the rumor spread through both the gods and devils, the truth known to them. However, the heaven-punishing Divine Emperor Moe was a god whose temperament was extremely upright and abhors evil. He naturally viewed such vulgar methods with extreme disdain, and precisely because of that, the devil emperor calmly attended the appointment without being much on guard. Yet Moe, with the ancestral divine art as bait, schemed against that devil emperor. Yuan-Chi gaped as he was slightly shocked inside. The heaven-punishing Emperor Moe was unable to completely wield the heaven-punishing ancestral sword. Every time he used the power of the heaven-punishing ancestral sword, he would lose large amounts of lifespan. Even though he could triumph over that devil emperor without the sword, there was no way he could beat the devil emperor and the 900 devil gods together without the help of the heaven-punishing ancestral sword's power. Yet he used the heaven-punishing ancestral sword even at the cost of losing large amounts of his lifespan. Yuan-Chi, the devil emperor Moe plotted against, was named the heaven-smiting devil emperor, one of the 4 great devil emperors, an existence equal to the god race's creation gods. The realms of gods and devils had always been incompatible, but they had never entirely become enemies. However, scheming and killing a devil emperor would unquestionably stir the fury of the entire devil realm. The consequences of that would very possibly cause the two realms to thoroughly meet each other with hostility, triggering fierce wars. That would be a catastrophe beyond imagination. There was also no way that heaven-punishing Emperor Mo-Yi hadn't thought of such a consequence. Yuanqi, to scheme despicably and lose large amounts of his lifespan, despite the consequences of gods and devils completely becoming hostile to each other. He still chose to kill the heaven-smiting devil emperor. How could the reason merely be because of the ancestral divine arts fragment that belonged to the devil race in the first place? Then, what was the reason? Yuanqi's brows sank down deeply as his heart began to race. What the girl was giving an account of was shockingly a secret that even the Golden Crow's soul and the other ancient gods didn't know about. Though he didn't know why the girl was telling him this, he could already faintly feel that what he was about to hear would be an ancient secret that would shock even the heavens themselves. The girl's voice resounded within his mind and soul, as each and every word deeply imprinted into the depths of his soul. That banished heaven-smiting devil emperor was the only female devil emperor of the 4 great devil emperors. She also held another identity, wife of the evil god. Those 5 words, each and every one of them shocking to the point of shaking the heavens. What? Yuanqi froze for an entire 10 breaths of time before he finally let out an involuntary screech. Evil god, a god, and at that time he was still a creation god. Heaven-smiting devil emperor, the emperor of all devils, the strongest devil of the devil race. The god race and devil race that resided in a realm together and were against each other, 2 races incompatible with each other. The most apex god and devil of these 2 races were actually husband and wife. How could that be possible? Wah, what the heck is this? Not only that, they also had a descendant, a taboo offspring from the combination of god and devil. Yuanqi's mouth opened even wider. Only after a long time did he finally speak, dumbfounded. So that was the reason why heaven-punishing divine emperor was determined to kill the heaven-smiting devil emperor by foul means in spite of the consequences. That devil god was actually evil gods, SSS. No wonder why evil god would have a fierce battle with Mo-Yi, the upright, hatred-abhorring, heaven-punishing divine emperor Mo-Yi who never tolerated the devil race. How could he allow a god, moreover, a creation god, to fall in love with a devil emperor and even have an offspring? In his eyes, this must be the greatest shame of the god race. Only by making heaven-smiting divine emperor vanish forever would the shame finally be washed away. This taboo secret was only known by the creation gods within the god race. Back then, while I was fortunate enough to serve under the creation god of life, Li Xiu, and found out about this matter at an extremely coincidental occasion. The creation god of life, Li Xiu, made me vow to never speak even half a word about it. Thus, I became the only god who knew of such a forbidden secret other than the creation gods. In the end, it also became the reason why I am unwilling to dissipate, even hanging to life in such a petty form. From the standpoint of the ancient era's gods and devils, this was indeed a forbidden secret, a secret that definitely can't be found out by the gods. Thus, the truth, circulated back then, became that the heaven-punishing divine emperor had plotted against the heaven-smiting emperor for the fragment of the ancestral divine arts fragment, and the heaven-punishing emperor Mo-Yi would definitely not try to clear the facts up either. Alright, it was also after that evil god abandoned the title of creation god, bestowing the title evil god to himself. So behind the scenes was actually such a taboo reason. The girl's voice kept resounding within his mind. You already know about the matter of evil god and Mo-Yi's fierce battle after that. However, evil god also knew Mo-Yi's personality. He was just too upright, abhorred evil too much, and had too strong of a view that gods and devils could not coexist. Him forcibly killing the heaven-smiting devil emperor was also for the name and dignity of the god race, as well as to prevent the god race's unrest after the evil god's actions were exposed. If Mo-Yi was an evil and despicable person, he definitely wouldn't have been acknowledged by the heaven-punishing ancestral sword. Because of that, he was aware himself that he could never take revenge against Mo-Yi. That fierce battle wasn't entirely evil god venting his anger. I had heard indistinctly from creation god of life Li Xiu that the duel would decide the fate of the offspring between evil god and heaven-smiting devil emperor. The offspring's fate? Then who won in the end? What happened to that descendant? Yuanqi asked a little hurriedly. The offspring of a creation god and devil emperor, that was a thoroughly forbidden existence. I don't know, The girl responded slowly and lightly. The rumors spread the most through the god realm that time was that evil god had won. However, other than Mo-E and evil god, there should be no one who truly knew the final result. Everyone only knew that evil god abandoned his title as the creation god of elements and titled himself evil god, becoming extraordinarily reclusive and shut in. Very rarely did he show himself, and he no longer stuck his nose into anything relating to the god race. Yuan-Chi slowly digested this information, which would be secrets as great as the heavens even in the ancient era. Then he asked, "Since these are all taboo and you also vowed to the creation god of life never to tell anyone, why would you tell them to me?" "Because you must know." "I must know?" Yuan-Chi pointed at himself, his face full of astonishment. Heaven punishing Divine Emperor Mo, he didn't know what world-turning consequence he had caused from the decision he made for the dignity of the god race, even to the day he died. While that consequence isn't truly over, even today, 1,000,000 years ago was the extinction of the god and devil races. Then even the humans may be destroyed because of it. And if that day truly comes, you who shoulder the power of the evil god will become the only hope. The girl's voice was lovable and gentle, yet it shocked Yuan-Chi to the point of being flabbergasted, as though he heard the illusory voice of the heavens. "Just what do you mean? What is that day you speak of? Just what day will it be?" Yuan-Chi's tone was very distressed and also much more tense. She could see through his power of the evil god. This meant that even if she wasn't the Ice Phoenix's original body, she was certainly a true god. Then, at least her words shouldn't be false. "I cannot tell you right now because you are still too weak and cannot shoulder that terrifying truth. What you need most now is to grow. Shouldering it too soon will only seriously affect your growth. You only need to know two things right now. Firstly, is to grow as fast as possible, make your evil god's power strong enough. Secondly, is to value your life. You must live on properly. If you die, then the final hope will be extinguished." "Me? Final hope? Why do I have an odd feeling that I've been chosen by the heavens to become the world's savior or something?" Really, aside from his blank shock, Yuan-Chi didn't really feel excited or anything like it. Instead, he felt that it was a bit unfathomable. Yuan-Chi thought about it but did not pursue the matter in the end. He nodded his head. "I understand. Even though I have no idea what will happen in the future, I have, at the very least, always cherished life." The girl was silent for a long while before she said dimly, "Out of everyone I've seen, you are the one who cherishes life the least." "Yuan-Chi, your life is too short, your experiences are too few, and your strength and soul are far too weak. If there comes a day you feel like you are already powerful enough, that your willpower and comprehension are ready to assume great waves and responsibility, come find me again. I will tell you the truth about everything and give you all my power." "You'll give me all your power, then you—" Yuan-Chi was shocked as he stared at the girl in the cold vein. This wasn't just an issue of a bestowal of power. The consequence it came with was undoubtedly her complete death. The girl lightly muttered as though weeping. "I cannot become as noble and great as the evil god, but this is still the last thing I can do and also the best ending for myself that I could think of." Even though he didn't really know what the truth was, he already felt unspeakable respect for the girl inside the cold vein. He nodded seriously. "All right. If such a day ever comes, I will come find you again. I will patiently wait here for that day. I also believe that fate would not be so cruel as to allow the human race to be extinguished after the fall of the gods and devils. The successor of the evil god, I am already exceptionally at ease after knowing of your existence. You can leave. Above, there is still someone waiting for you." Yuan-Chi nodded. However, he did not know that outside the heavenly lake, everyone had already left, and there was only the Snow Song Realm King was waiting for him. Could you answer one of my questions?" Before he left, Yuan-Chi hesitated and asked, "Are you planning to ask how to achieve the divine tribulation realm that you know of before the profound God convention?" The young girl's words saw through his thoughts. Yuan-Chi nodded. "I am unable to aid you. After all, this is already not my world or era. However, the current Snow Song Realm King being your master is indeed the best option. She possesses unbelievable strength and extremely high intelligence. Compared to your previous master, she's much more suited to be your master in the profound way. But, Yuan-Chi stared widely. She frequently enters the heavenly Netherfrost Lake to cultivate. My divine senses are able to detect everything about her. Her personality is exceptionally eccentric, with two completely opposite extremes. My words are unable to express this well. From now on, when you interact with her, you'll understand what I mean. Personality, two extremes, what the heck? Extreme means overbearing in one aspect. Two extremes in itself was already a paradox, and it was even her personality. Yuanqi nodded slowly. I understand. Even though I don't know what the future will be like, I never once thought that I would be noble enough to bear the burden of some, weird mission or something. However, I still hope that I won't disappoint you then. When he finished speaking, Yuanqi did not stay any longer. He released his profound energy and went upward against the water. Chapter 994, Weak Point. Yuanqi left, but the slight turmoil on the lake's bottom didn't calm for a long while. Even if it were a divine being, they would not be able to completely digest an enormous recollection in a short period of time, let alone be completely thorough. The girl in the cold vein was still silent as her consciousness completely immersed itself into Yuanqi's memories. The evil god? Why would he have darkness profound energy? Was it related to the fact that he had united with the heaven-smiting devil emperor? Or the heaven-smiting devil slayer sword? Heaven-smiting, devil slayer, heaven-smiting, a name which came from the heaven-smiting devil emperor. The heaven-smiting devil clan beneath the heaven-smiting devil emperor were the only devils which could transform into swords. The swords they transformed into were known as heaven-smiting devil swords. As for the sword the heaven-smiting devil emperor transformed into, it was called the heaven-smiting devil god sword, which possessed an extremely dark sword light. Devil Slayer. This was the name of the swords the sword spirit god clan transformed into. Devil Slayer swords were the terror of many devils. When the war between the gods and devils began, the sword spirit god clan was the first to be annihilated by the devil race. Furthermore, if I recall correctly, the sword that the clan master of the sword spirit god clan transformed into was called the Holy Spirit Devil Slayer sword, which possessed a bright sword light. In the battle against the Moon Slaughter Devil Sovereign, the restraint it had over darkness devil power had obviously reached the level of the Holy Spirit Devil Slayer sword. As for the enormous amount of suppression it had toward the devil soul, only the heaven-smiting devil god sword which the heaven-smiting devil emperor transformed into was able to do that. Even if Yuanqi had used all his power back then, both his profound strength and soul power didn't even reach half of the Moon Slaughter Devil Sovereign's. The reason why he was able to exterminate the Moon Slaughter Devil Sovereign was simply because of the scope of the extraordinary power and soul suppression it possessed. Such an existence which obviously opposed and restricted to such an extreme. Why would it also appear on another sword? The sword light was even a strange vermilion color. That profound arc did indeed belong to the sword spirit clan, but that girl named Hunger had a heaven-smiting attribute. Was she really the daughter of the sword spirit god clan? Wait, I remember that profound arc was the one that the evil god bestowed upon the sword spirit god clan that could change its independent space and could travel through dimensions. It was made by the evil god using the world piercer. The Azure Cloud Continent, Cloud's End Cliff, the Dark Abyss, those ancient devil beasts, and that girl who only had 1/4 of a soul. The dragon god said that it sealed its daughter inside the heaven-punishing ancestral sword. So the rumors about the heaven-punishing ancestral sword last appearing in the dragon god clan was true. If that's the case, then the dragon god clan throwing it into the well of transmigration after facing the devil race's suppression must be true as well. But why would it seal its own daughter into the heaven-punishing ancestral sword? It is a holy sword that's hard to meddle with. Even if it was the dragon god, sealing its own daughter's soul inside would require a huge price. Wait, well of transmigration. Could it be? Too much incomprehensible information was within Yuanqi's memories. She fused the information with her own ancient memories and slowly pondered in silence for a very long time, searching through them. The speed in which Yuanqi went upward against the waters was a bit faster than his descent. This was because he had accidentally encountered the surviving Ice Phoenix's true body and stayed on the lake's bottom for a period of time. This made him a bit tense as he rapidly thought about what he was going to say next. When the lake water split open, Yuanqi flew up from within the heavenly Netherfrost Lake and then was stunned. The heavenly Netherfrost Lake was calm and peaceful and absolutely empty. After looking all around him, he realized he didn't see a single person. Ice Phoenix Palace and Ice Phoenix Divine Hall's total of more than 5,000 people had all disappeared. Yuanqi reached out a hand and pressed it on his forehead. Even though he had directly dove to the lake's very bottom, not even 15 minutes had passed since he went into the water. The time it took him was not much longer than Muhanese. How was it possible that there wasn't a single person in sight? He suddenly thought back to when his consciousness had gone blank when the Ice Phoenix was reading his memories. Could it be that many hours had passed during his blank state? Or many days? That couldn't be right. With the Ice Phoenix's strong soul power, reading memories shouldn't take that long. HMPH, you've actually come out this fast. It seems like you are not as bold as this king had imagined. What was obviously the normal voice of a woman actually exploded like many claps of thunder within Yuanqi's heart. Yuanqi lifted his head, lightning quick. In the skies above was an enormous frost dragon covered in cold energy. Its huge wings were spread open, hiding the horizon. Above the dragon head, through the icy mist, was terrifying silhouette that released in frightening, almighty suppression. "Sect, Master!" Yuanqi shouted before his entire body stiffened in place. He was no longer able to say anything else after that. What a terrifying pressure! Beneath the Snow Song Realm King's suppression, all of Divine Ice Phoenix Sect's elders, palace masters, and top disciples would become quiet in fear. He was now in front of the Snow Song Realm King alone, and he had never experienced this strong of a pressure in his entire life. It was a feeling as though his body, bones, and even soul could be ground into fine powder at any time. This kind of suppression was definitely not something she was releasing intentionally. It was merely her most natural state. It was because she was in the Divine Master realm, an existence that was at the top even in the God realm, powerful to the point that she could be a realm king of an upper star realm. It truly is astonishing. This king can only dive to a depth of 23,000 feet, yet you are actually able to dive to a depth that this king is unable to perceive. HMPH, have you prepared your explanation as to how you have done that? The Snow Song Realm King's voice was cold yet ordinary. Yuanqi secretly sucked in a small breath, about to utter the excuse he had prepared beforehand. But before he had yet to speak, he was interrupted by the Snow Song Realm King. Are you going to tell this king that you also don't know why, while stressing that you originally didn't even dare to soak in the heavenly Netherfrost Lake? So this king would think that you have a special frost constitution, an innate talent that you yourself do not know about. Yuanqi's open mouth immediately froze, because what the Snow Song Realm King said and what he was about to say was exactly the same. Of those who dare lie to this king, they are usually dead or in a living hell. Yet you, the Snow Song Realm King's voice suddenly lowered. You are someone who bears the ancient evil god power. It's too pitiful if I kill you just like that. As though he had been struck by lightning, Yuanqi's vision exploded. What did she say? Evil god? No way. Impossible. The evil god's power, aside from him, Jasmine, and those ancient divine beings, no one else should know about it. Even though the Snow Song Realm King was terrifyingly powerful, she was still human. How could she possibly know that he possessed the power of the evil god? Was it be hearing wrong, or? Yuanqi raised his head. Even though he did his best to appear calm, his actions were still somewhat stiff. Sect Master, I don't really understand what you just said. Don't understand? The Snow Song Realm King sneered. You are the one who personally told me that you possess the evil god's inheritance, and now you're telling me that you don't understand. Heh, you think this king is as stupid as you? Yuanqi was completely stumped in place. I told her personally. How was that possible? The evil god's inheritance is the greatest secret in my body. How is it possible for me to tell anyone about it? You don't need to think about making any other excuses. This king will just tell you right now. Yuanqi, the Snow Song Realm King said with a heavy voice. Unless you have the legendary law transcending 9 profound exquisite body, my sect's highest profound art, the Ice Phoenix God Investiture Canon, requires the power of the Ice Phoenix as foundation for one to cultivate it. Yet you, without the soul or blood of the Ice Phoenix, was able to cultivate it to the 6th stage. This is in no way ordinary. Not only have you successfully cultivated the Ice Phoenix God Investiture Canon, you also possess the flame power of the Phoenix and Golden Crow, and you can also use them simultaneously. This is also definitely not ordinary. Yuanqi listened carefully. It seemed that Mu Bingyun had already told her everything about him, but linking him with the evil god with just those was impossible. Where in the world did he go wrong? On the first day that you arrived on the Snow Song Realm, you defeated a profound practitioner in the Divine Way with profound strength that had yet to enter the Divine Way. This was not the doing of any ordinary profound strength. When you made a breakthrough here previously, the cold energy in this place couldn't harm you at all when you were in a state where all the profound energy in your body had scattered. Instead, you only used a few hours to completely break through into the Divine Way, and the instant you broke through, All the ice spirits were attracted over. Such a thing is impossible unless you have elemental powers beyond comprehension. And this point was proven when you dove tens of thousands of feet into the heavenly Netherfrost Lake. The Snow Song Realm King's tone shifted yet again, becoming even more shocking. If it's only these things, saying that your innate talent was extraordinary would obviously suffice, and no one would ever associate it with the evil god. After all, a person with extraordinary talent always appeared in every era. Even though it is rare to combine 2 or 3 divine powers, combining different types of profound energy is even more rare. The most important point is that a creation god's inheritance has never appeared in this world, so no one would ever associate your power with the creation god level's evil god. But you just had to be reckless and reveal Star God's broken shadow. Yuanqi fiercely raised his head, his mind shaken. In that instant, he had suddenly realized something. Do you know why Star God's broken shadow is called Star God's broken shadow? It is because it is a star god technique that only the 12 star gods of the star god realm can cultivate. The only people who are able to teach you how to use Star God's broken shadow are the 12 star gods. And the reason why you have come to the god realm is to find the heavenly slaughter star god. There was a rumor 8 years ago that the heavenly slaughter star god had obtained some kind of evil god inheritance in the southern divine region. But then she had perished after being infected by the absolute god-slaying poison. This isn't a secret that only a few know about, but something that shook the entire god realm at that time. Everyone in the god realm knew about it. Yuanqi gaped and was speechless for a long time. You did not hesitate to risk danger to come here in order to see the heavenly slaughter star god one more time, which means that you two must have had an extremely deep relationship. This kind of relationship definitely cannot be born overnight. In that case, when the heavenly slaughter star god disappeared 8 years ago, she must have been together with you. Then that, combined with your abnormal profound strength and mastery of the elements, added to the fact that the evil god was once called the creation god of elements, added to the rumors about the heavenly slaughter star god having obtained some kind of evil god inheritance. This king can easily surmise that you possess the evil god's inheritance. If your star god's broken shadow were to be revealed before anyone else, it is extremely possible that someone would investigate. If it were to be spread to the star god realm, they would definitely look into which star god had taught you it. If they found out that you and the heavenly slaughter star god were connected, then link that with your abnormal profound strength and mastery of the elements. If this king can guess it right, there's no reason they wouldn't. And it's not just the evil god power, it is even possible for them to guess that you possess the sky poison pearl. Because the poison the heavenly slaughter star god had been infected with at that time was the absolute god-slaying poison. By then, how do you think you will end up? How do you think the planet you came from would end up? SSS? Yuanqi's forehead dripped with cold sweat. Chapter 995, Merciless Slaughter. There are rarely records concerning the primordial gods in the lower realms, so you can do as you please there, but this is the god realm, the place where the primordial gods resided. There are traces of countless gods here, as well as legacies, records, legends, and even memories of gods here. You came to the god realm with almost complete ignorance, yet dare to behave without restraint just to show that you are unyielding and unknowingly revealed your weak point. Whether it was in your match against Li Mingcheng and Jai Hanfeng or in front of Mu Yizhu, you didn't hesitate to use Star God's broken shadow. Thankfully, the only person who recognized it was Mu Bingyun, the one who would never harm you. If it were any other person, and if it had triggered the worst outcome, countless of people would think up of every possible method to steal the evil god power from your body. It is, after all, a never-before-seen creation god inheritance. By that time, you dying tragically would be the lightest punishment you'll face, and you would even implicate the planet you came from. When Yuanqi fought Li Mingcheng and Jai Hanfeng, he did indeed use Star God's broken shadow many times. At that time, Mu Bingyun had always been watching in secret. Even though she felt that it was a bit familiar, she hadn't recognized it to be Star God's broken shadow then. But after Yuanqi instantly snatched Liu Hang from Mu Yizhu and Mu Liuqiu using a movement skill, that completely convinced her that it was undoubtedly Star God's broken shadow. The Snow Song Realm King had long since known that Yuanqi wanted to see the heavenly slaughter Star God. So even if he didn't possess Star God's broken shadow, she would still be able to figure things out based on Yuanqi's abnormal elemental powers and the fact that she knew something was between them. However, this was only because she knew that there was something between Yuanqi and the heavenly slaughter star god. If Star God's broken shadow were to be recognized by any other person, even if they wouldn't think about the evil god's inheritance, the consequences would still be grave. Thus, she had to give Yuanqi the coldest, most severe awakening. As for Yuanqi, he was indeed already drenched in cold sweat. He was unrivaled in the blue pole star, so he didn't need to worry about his actions. Even though he had already stayed in the snow song realm for more than 3 months, a large majority of that time was spent in his cultivation room. The times in which he truly made contact with others from the god realm only amounted to a few days, and there was no doubt he carried the indulgence given to him from the blue pole star during those times, and it was a considerably strong indulgence. His understanding of the god realm was so superficial that it could be considered non-existent, causing him to almost place himself in the greatest danger without knowing it. This bucket of cold water completely cooled Yuanqi's heart. In the past, the only ones that would dare reprimand Yuanqi were Jasmine and the little demon empress. Even though the Snow Song Realm King had just ruthlessly berated him, Yuanqi wasn't angry at all. Even the deeply buried resentment he felt toward her previously had directly disappeared. In his heart, he instead felt a bit of gratitude and respect. This was because she had not just ruthlessly awakened him, but also did not have any intentions of snatching the evil god's inheritance from him, even though she knew he possessed it. There was no need for her to waste time to explain all this to him otherwise. Her aura was incomparably frightening, its suppression so strong that he could barely breathe. Rumor had it that she was also incredibly merciless and regarded life like grass. But she was actually not the least bit sinister. To the god realm, an unprecedented creation god inheritance was no doubt an attraction which none was able to defy. She had discovered it while being the first and only to discover it, yet she had no intention of coveting it at all. Yuanqi willingly saluted deeply. "I thank Sect Master for the awakening. This disciple knows he was wrong." "No, you were wrong." "HMPH?" The Snow Song Realm King icily snorted. "It's best if you really do know you were wrong. You do not have to conceal your profound strength and elemental powers, but you are absolutely not allowed to use Star God's broken shadow in the God realm." "Yes," Yuanqi nodded. After that harsh awakening, he wouldn't dare to even if she allowed him to. It was just that Star God's broken shadow's strong, instantaneous movement was able to greatly suppress the disadvantage of using a heavy sword. If he didn't have Star God's broken shadow as a supplement, his disadvantage while using the heaven-smiting sword in battle would be far greater than before. Two soul-piercing eyes seemed to instantly see through Yuanqi's thoughts. She said disdainfully, "You have no need to feel that it's a pity. My Snow Song Realm's moon-splitting cascade is unrivaled in the God realm. What is a mere Star God's broken shadow compared to that? Even though no one in the entire sect is able to cultivate it aside from this king. Since you have been able to successfully learn Star God's broken shadow, there's no reason why you aren't able to cultivate moon-splitting cascade." Yuanqi slowly uttered, "Does this mean Sect Master is willing to accept me as your direct disciple? If that wasn't the case, do you think you would be able to stand here alive?" The Snow Song Realm King said coldly, "But you don't have to undergo the procedures now because you are not yet qualified. The discipleship ceremony is in 7 days. In these 7 days, stay in your Ice Phoenix Palace and don't go anywhere. Use those days to properly understand your position and identity in the God realm, as well as the reason why you have come here. Understand what kind of talent is qualified to be unyielding and have the right to talk about fairness. And think about what you have to do to survive just a bit longer. This king rarely accepts a disciple, so if you die young due to excessive foolishness, wouldn't that make me lose face?" Yuanqi took another deep breath and said, "Yes, I thank Sect Master for the instructions. You may go. Mu Fengshu and Mu Sushan are still outside. Tell them to come in before you leave." Mu Fengshu and Mu Sushan? Yuanqi didn't question it. With a calm mental state, he slowly left on foot. When he reached the edge of the barrier, a 5-foot crack automatically split apart on the barrier. Yuanqi walked out of the barrier and immediately saw the waiting Mu Fengshu and Mu Sushan with a single glance. When she saw Yuanqi, Mu Fengshu instantly looked away with a complex expression. Mu Sushan, however, hurriedly came over. "Yuanqi, congratulations. I knew you were extraordinary since the first day I saw you, but I never expected that even Hanny would fall short of you. For you to have descended 10,000 feet below the heavenly lake, this old one is unable to believe that even now." Even though Mu Sushan still acted like an elder, The expression which he used to look at Yuanqi was completely different from before. Even the way he talked possessed a bit of cautious respect. It was because the Snow Song Realm King had personally chosen Yuanqi to be her direct disciple. An Ice Phoenix Palace disciple and the Snow Song Realm King's direct inheriting disciple were two completely different concepts. The former was just a disciple, but the latter, their position, was pretty much not inferior to the elders and palace masters. If he was able to receive the favor, he may even be above the elders and palace masters. After all, the direct disciple was the person closest to the Realm King. Yuanqi had always respected Mu Sushan, so he hurriedly answered. This disciple was only lucky. Sect Master is currently waiting for Senior Sushan and Hall Master Fengshu. Please head in. Sect Master Mu Sushan lowered his voice to a mere whisper. Did she mention anything? Yuanqi shook his head. No, but since she has summoned both of you at the same time, it should be related to some great matter concerning freezing Snow Hall. That ought to be the case. Mu Sushan nodded. He felt somewhat uneasy in his heart, as though it didn't seem to be related to freezing Snow Hall at all, but he couldn't think of any other reason aside from that. Mu Sushan and Mu Fengshu proceeded onward. The barrier immediately closed right after they had entered, completely isolating the inside. After re-entering the heavenly Netherfrost Lake, the footsteps of the duo clearly slowed, becoming more careful. They came to the lakeside with lowered heads and simultaneously kowtowed. Sushan greets Sect Master. Fengshu greets Sect Master. I wonder what instructions Sect Master has for summoning us today, Mu Fengshu said while bending her head. It is nothing major. The Snow Song Realm's voice was unexpectedly ordinary. This king just wants to ask you two about something insignificant. How was it possible for the Snow Song Realm King to specifically make them stay for an insignificant matter? Mu Sushan's heart had been intense since the start. Please instruct us, Sect Master. Sushan and the main Hall Master will do our best to answer. Very good. The Snow Song Realm King nodded slowly, barely any pressure in her words. This king wants to ask if you two still remember the battle that Yuanqi had several months ago between two disciples, Li Mingcheng and Jai Hanfeng, when he first came to freezing Snow Hall. Mu Sushan was shocked. Mu Fengshu's entire body trembled as she said with a frightened voice. Li Mingcheng is Fengshu's nephew, and Jai Hanfeng is a freezing snow disciple. They behaved rudely toward Yuanqi that day, and it is Fengshu's fault for failing to discipline them. It was clear that Mu Fengshu thought that the Snow Song Realm King wanted to look into what had happened that day. After all, the current Yuanqi was no longer the Yuanqi from before. He was now the Snow Song Realm King's direct disciple. Oh, Fengshu, you have no need to be nervous. The Snow Song Realm King's voice was still ordinary. This king has also heard a little about what transpired that day. If you want to say rude, it is Yuanqi who was more rude. You not pursuing matters after both Li Mingcheng and Jai Hanfeng obtained serious injuries is truly an admirable broad-mindedness, so how could you have any wrongs? Mu Fengshu didn't dare to speak. This king actually wanted to ask something else. The Snow Song Realm King had yet to move, but her voice seemed as though it was beside their ears. Do you two still have an impression of the movement skill Yuanqi used against Li Mingcheng and Jai Hanfeng? Mu Sushan quickly raised his head. Even though he didn't understand why the Snow Song Realm King would ask this question specifically, if they were to speak of impressions, not only did he have one, it was also very deep. He quickly replied, reporting to Sect Master. 3 months have already passed, yet Sushan still has a deep impression of it, because the movement skill Yuanqi used that day was incomparably exquisite and strange. Sushan was no more than 300 meters away from him, yet he still didn't clearly see how Yuanqi shifted. Mu Fengshu also said quickly. Even though Fengshu did not personally see Yuanqi and Mingcheng fight, the movement skill Yuanqi used against Jai Hanfeng a few times was indeed, as Sushan has said, extraordinarily exquisite yet strange. The sword he held in hand was obviously incomparably heavy, yet he was able to instantly translocate. He used it several times against Jai Hanfeng to catch him unprepared. Even Fengshu finds it hard to grasp. At this time, the duo's minds had calmed down by quite a lot, so the Sect Master was only asking about Yuanqi. But of course, since she selected him to be her direct disciple, she had to be completely thorough. The duo replied earnestly while also sticking in some praise for Yuanqi in their answers. At that time, Yuanqi had yet to enter the divine way, yet his movement skill made you both unable to get a feel for it. This is certainly strange. It seems that his movement skill is quite unusual. The Snow Song Realm King's voice faintly seemed as though it had come closer. Then have you wondered what kind of profound movement skill he used? Sushin did indeed think about it many times. In front of the Snow Song Realm King's question, Mu Sushin seriously replied. The movement skill Yuanqi used is a bit similar to the moon-splitting cascade Sect Master uses, but since he is from the lower realms, a movement skill from the lower realms would obviously be incomparable to Sect Master's moon-splitting cascade. Then, if it wasn't from the lower realms, if it was from the God realm, and if it was from the highest level God realm, are there any movement skills similar to the one Yuanqi used? The Snow Song Realm King asked indifferently. Highest level God realm. Mu Sushin didn't think for long before his eyes suddenly flashed. He blurted, Star God's broken shadow. These 4 words also enlightened Mu Fengshu, and she replied right away. Yes, the movement skill Yuanqi used is extremely similar to the Star God's broken shadow shown during the previous Profound God Convention. In fact, you can say they're exactly the same. Clap, clap, clap. The Snow Song Realm King slowly clapped 3 times, praising. Very good, as expected of the experienced and knowledgeable Fengshu and Sushin. This king has only given a little hint, yet you both have accurately guessed it. Even if this king did not give a hint, you two would have realized it soon enough. If news of an Ice Phoenix disciple knowing how to use the 12 Star God's movement skill were to be leaked, and the Star God realm was to investigate this, it is extremely probable for the disciple I have just accepted to die young. It was as though the atmosphere had instantly congealed as a soul-piercing icy intent, instantly pervaded through the bodies of Mu Sushin and Mu Fengshu like a terrifying epidemic. As though they had finally realized something, they quickly bent down again, their bodies acutely trembling from the fright. Sect Master. Sushin swears that he will never leak even half a word out. If I go against this, may the heavens destroy me, may I die a violent death. Fengshu has never heard of Star God's broken shadow, never heard. Fengshu, Sushin. The Snow Song Realm King's voice was ice-cold and indifferent. Both of you have lived long enough to know this saying. Only the dead can truly keep a secret. Sect Master, Mu Fengshu said while trembling. Fengshu has always been loyal and devoted to Sect Master all these years and the contributions we have given to the sect. You two have indeed always been loyal, and your lives have also been extremely important to the sect. You two dying would truly be unfortunate. The Snow Song Realm King slowly said without mercy, but since Yuanqi has become this king's disciple, his life is far more important than yours. The figure behind the icy mist reached out one hand. Choose, do you want to take your own lives, or shall this king have to do it personally? Chapter 996, Meeting Big Senior Sister Again in the Snow Song Realm. No one was able to live if the Realm King wanted them dead, and no one dared to not die either. This unexpected calamity that fell from the heavens caused Mu Sushin's body to turn ice cold, as he was aware that it was impossible for him to live past today. His entire body leaned over as he pleaded, Sect Master, on behalf of Sushin's 6,000 years of loyalty, please treat my family well. Don't worry, this king will naturally do a soul search after you have died. As long as you haven't told any of them what you should not have said, this king won't bother to send them to keep you company. Mu Sushin heavily kowtowed. I thank Sect Master for the great favor. With that kowtow, Mu Sushin's body remained immobile. White mist exploded from his body, along with his life aura. He had severed his own life vein and profound veins. No, Sect Master, spare me, Sect Master, spare me. With legs already having gone limp, Mu Fengshu recoiled, then after a shout, she flew like a headless housefly attempting to escape. Ha! The hand behind the icy mist gently pointed. Ding! A soft sound resounded, causing Mu Fengshu's voice and figure to instant stop. She had been frozen into a block of ice, and her frozen, frightened face was terrifying. I originally planned to leave your corpse intact, but since you don't know how to appreciate kindness. Disappear. Ping. Alongside the block of ice, Mu Fengshu's body instantly became ice powder which filled the sky among the members of the freezing snow hall. Mu Fengshu and Mu Sushin had participated in the Profound God Convention, which meant that they had seen Star God's broken shadow before. This was why they had to die? Yuanqi was naturally unaware of what had happened within the heavenly Netherfrost Lake. He stood outside the heavenly Netherfrost Lake's barrier with a dumbfounded look on his face, unmoving. How do I even return? When he had arrived, he rode on the ice boat controlled by Mu Bingyun. But now, if he was to go back alone, he might not even know which direction to leave in. It was right at this time that a wisp of cold energy came from overhead. A petite blue figure controlling an ice boat arrived before him. Standing on top of the ice boat was Mu Xiaolan. She looked at Yuanqi but didn't approach, clear nervousness on her face. Senior brother Yuanqi, Master told me to wait here for you so we can return to the Ice Phoenix Palace together. Yuanqi widened his eyes. Then he suddenly walked over and flicked Mu Xiaolan's forehead. "WHH!" Mu Xiaolan shouted in surprise and pain as she covered her forehead. "WWW, what are you doing?" "That's what I want to ask you," Yuanqi said with a dissatisfied grimace. "You used to act like you're all that in front of me before, so why do you look like a rat seeing a cat today? Did you eat the wrong medicine?" "Why, you're the one who ate the wrong medicine. I was nice enough to stay in the cold to wait for you, but you flicked my forehead." Immediately aware that she wasn't using the right tone, she instantly weakened her voice. "You're the sect master's direct disciple now. So you're senior brother now. Every disciple has to call you senior brother." Yuanqi rubbed the tip of his nose, muttering to himself. "So a direct disciple is this great, huh?" "Of course it's great," Mu Xiaolan said in a small voice. "Being able to be at sect master's side obviously is. No one will dare provoke you and you can do whatever you want." "I can do whatever I want. It's that great." Yuanqi widened his eyes. Then he suddenly stared at Mu Xiaolan and said to himself with an incredibly serious voice, "Then does this mean if I ask Sect Master to give you to me as a bed-warming servant girl, that wouldn't be an issue?" At number percent, Mu Xiaolan's little face instantly flushed red. After she gritted her white teeth, her anger finally exploded as she kicked at Yuanqi's butt. "You despicable lowly man. You haven't changed at all even after becoming the Sect Master's direct disciple. Bullying girls is the only thing you know to do. Who's going to be your bed-warming servant girl? Dream on, dream on, dream on." Yuanqi rubbed his butt after getting kicked off the ice boat and mumbled gloomily, "I was just casually saying it. Why do you have to be that angry? Sai, I guess being the Sect Master's direct disciple isn't all that great. I still get bullied by you." Mu Xiaolan dazedly stared at him for a while before she suddenly burst into giggles. "You couldn't possibly really have eaten the wrong medicine, could you?" Yuanqi's eyes were brimming with concern. The ice boat activated, breaking into the sky. Mu Xiaolan said with a soft voice, "I suddenly realized that you still have some merits." "Ah, this little girl. If you want to praise me, just praise me. What does still have mean?" "I originally thought that you would definitely act like you're all that after becoming Sect Master's direct disciple, so I was a little afraid of you. I didn't expect that you would be the same as before. I yelled at you and even hit you, but you didn't get angry or even retaliate. MN, you're still the same junior brother, Yuanqi. That depends on the person, you know. If anyone else were to dare kick me, I would break their leg. But you are my senior sister after all. I can only endure it," Yuanqi said with a helpless expression. Mu Xiaolan rolled her eyes but then started feeling happy. "Oh right, since you haven't gone through the discipleship ceremony yet, you're still a disciple of Ice Phoenix Palace and I'm still your senior sister. For these 7 days, you still have to obediently listen to me, your senior sister." "I understand," Yuanqi said powerlessly. Has this little girl lost her memories? Have I ever listened to her before? I never expected that you would be this powerful, even more powerful than senior brother Hanny. Today seemed like a dream." Mu Xiaolan muttered, growing a bit absent-minded atop the ice boat. The further they were from the heavenly Netherfrost Lake, the more gentle the cold energy became. When they were about to reach Ice Phoenix City's domain, another ice boat appeared in front of them. It floated in place, as though it was waiting for something. The stationary ice boat suddenly came over after it had seen Yuanqi quickly arriving before them. Two faces that Yuanqi had seen several days ago were on the ice boat. Mu Yizhu and Mu Liuqiu. "Senior brother Yizhu, senior sister Liuok." Before Mu Xiaolan had yet to finish her greeting, Mu Yizhu immediately fell before Yuanqi, and he was even kneeling. "Senior brother Yuanqi." Mu Yizhu's voice trembled with his body. That face was indeed Mu Yizhu's face, but he didn't have half the terrifying mightiness he possessed 7 days ago. The only thing present was terror and implorement. Several days ago, I had eyes but couldn't see. I overestimated my abilities and actually rudely offended senior brother Yuanqi. I beg senior brother Yuanqi to be maganiaus and forget about offenses committed by a little person like me. I'll never dare to do it again. Yuanqi was slightly stunned. At his side, Mu Xiaolan was also shocked, but she wasn't too shocked. When the Snow Song Realm King had personally appointed Yuanqi to be her direct disciple, Mu Yizhu's guts did indeed nearly shatter. If he had clashed with Hanyi that day and Hanyi became the direct disciple, he wouldn't be this terrified because Hanyi was a gentleman. Yuanqi, however, the unyielding temperament he displayed that day, along with his terrifying methods, was definitely someone who would seek vengeance. Yizhu's gallbladder was in a constant state of near collapse every breath that passed after leaving the heavenly Netherfrost Lake. He didn't return to his Ice Phoenix Palace and instead waited here, with Liuqiu with attentive eyes. Senior brother Yuanqi, Liuqiu knows that she was wrong. Liuqiu's lovely face wore a pitiful expression. As she spoke, her eyes glistened with tears, her pupils resembling peach blossoms. She was actually hinting that he could do whatever he wanted. Oh no, clearly indicating that. The power of the identity of the Realm King's direct disciple was truly being displayed before Yuanqi's eyes. He turned around to look at Mu Xiaolan and asked, "Senior Sister Xiaolan, what should I do?" Never expecting that Yuanqi would actually ask her that so suddenly and even called her senior sister before the duel, Mu Xiaolan was stunned for a while. Then she weakly said, "Weren't the matters of that day already settled? Just forget it." "Oh," Yuanqi nodded. "Since senior sister Xiaolan has spoken, then I'll just forget about it. You two can leave now. I've already forgotten what had happened previously." Mu Xiaolan slightly gaped. Even if she was more slow, she ought to know that this was Yuanqi deliberately saying that he was doing it for her. It was as though Mu Yizhu was hearing a voice from the heavens. He had yet to truly believe that it would be forgotten, just like that. He quickly took out a jade box he had long prepared in advance and offered it to Yuanqi. "I thank senior brother Yuanqi for his magnanimity. I thank senior sister Xiaolan. In here is Liuqiu and my regards. Please accept it. From now on, if senior brother Yuanqi has any commands, Yizhu is ready to risk life and limb to help out." "Amen, amen." Mu Liuqiu immediately nodded. From her aura to her voice, the rude and imposing Mu Liuqiu from back then had now become soft and delicate. "From now on, as long as it's something senior brother Yuanqi wants, Liuqiu will agree to anything." Yuanqi. "At number percent, Mu Xiaolan, at number percent, how could she do that?" After their bowing and item gifting, they still continued to thank profusely as they left. Yuanqi kneaded his chin and muttered, "So this status really is pretty great." "Of course," Mu Xiaolan pitched in, "I don't find it weird at all that they're here to apologize. Forget about them, even if all those emperors see you, they would have to be courteous." "It's that exaggerated," Yuanqi casually commented. "It's not exaggerated at all," Mu Xiaolan said rightly. The ice boat speedily entered Ice Phoenix City and quickly arrived at the 36th Palace. The 36th Ice Phoenix Palace was as quiet as it usually was, yet Mu Xiaolan wore a face of doubt as she said to herself, "Weird, why is it this quiet? Based on what had happened, there should be a lot of people here." After all, Yuanqi had become the sect master's direct disciple, so there ought to be a ton of people visiting the 36th Palace. But there wasn't the slightest trace of anyone having come here to visit as far as she could see. "Yuanqi, you go look for Master. Master should have a lot of important things to tell you. I'll go put away the ice boat." Mu Xiaolan left to put away the ice boat. Yuanqi descended from the skies and entered the Ice Phoenix Palace. His mood now naturally changed immensely from what he exhibited before. As he slowly walked into the main hall, he thought about what the Snow Song Realm King had said. Soon enough, a peculiar presence and smell caused him to pause in his steps and lift his head. It was also at the same time that the figure of a woman before him slowly turned around. An otherworldly, bright, and beautiful face so seductive that it could devour hearts appeared before Yuanqi's eyes. Even though this wasn't the first time Yuanqi had seen it, his mind was still instantly swept away as his eyes and mind grew intoxicated. Before Yuanqi had seen her, he never believed that he would actually lose control of his mind to such a degree just because of a woman's appearance. He was like that the first time and the same the second. The person before him was shockingly the girl who came to deliver the amorous frost due that day, who called herself Mu Xiunian. Her white-blue hair spilled down. Bright light was not shining upon it, yet it still reflected the splendor of water and jade. She was still wearing the snowy clothes from that day, but she appeared a bit hazy, as though she had been soaked in a bit of moisture. Yuanqi's gaze uncontrollably fell to her bosom. The pattern of the Ice Phoenix was Ice Phoenix Palace's most divine symbol. However, the Ice Phoenix pattern, which was being squeezed by her breasts, becoming deformed, actually released an attraction great enough to make any man's desire go out of control. "Big-breasted senior sister." Yuanqi, the corner of the seductive woman's mouth slightly curled. With eyes like the autumn waters, she said in a silky voice, "Little brother, you're doing it on purpose this time, right? How gutsy to actually dare take liberties with me." The big-breasted senior sister, Yuanqi had blurted out a few times in the past, were indeed a slip of the tongue after he had lost his mind. Because even though that was what he thought, he definitely didn't have the guts to take liberties with a disciple of the Divine Hall. But he had done it on purpose this time, because he was now the sect master's direct disciple. Who wouldn't he dare take liberties with? Furthermore, she had actually admitted that she was Mu Feixu back then, causing him to seriously lose some face in front of Mu Xiaolan and Mu Bingyun. Wasn't that her taking liberties with him? So him returning the favor was right and proper. Chapter 997, Great Sect Assembly. Yuanqi hurriedly shook his head. No, it's only because senior sister is just too beautiful. I can't help but carelessly spout nonsense, every time. The seductive woman's eyes narrowed as the corners of her lips rose and formed an enchanting smile which contained hints of abnormality. I heard that you are about to become sect master's direct disciple. It's truly enviable, huh? Ahaha, so big cough, I mean senior sister already knew, that's only due to luck. Yuanqi forced out a smile, but his heartbeat was already a mess. He could only keep cursing in his heart. This woman was truly too deadly. Was this the legendary femme fatale? At this moment, the woman sweetly giggled as she suddenly began slowly sashing toward Yuanqi. She seemed to have only taken 2 steps, yet her figure blurred and then suddenly appeared in front of Yuanqi. Having suddenly become so close to her, Yuanqi didn't react at all and instead just stood there in a daze. The face before his eyes was beautiful enough to charm everything under the heavens, especially the pair of watery, phoenix eyes which sparkled. They were exceptionally enchanting. She seemingly threw herself into his arms, causing amorous sensations to spread across Yuanqi's body. Yuanqi couldn't control himself as his eyes looked down, observing from so close. He realized that the ice phoenix pattern on her chest was not only warped, but filled to the point of bursting. The twin round peaks beneath the snow-white clothes were extremely full and looked like 2 large balls of snow-white jade. They were so large they were shocking, yet they seemingly did not sag whatsoever and instead remained extremely tight. They were so close, Yuanqi could also faintly smell the scent of an extremely fragrant and luxurious incense. As Yuanqi remained dumbfounded, the seductive woman slowly raised one of her small, smooth white hands and gently poked Yuanqi on his chest with her thin fingers, which were like delicate white bamboo shoots, and her nails, which were like jade. "Then you better listen to Sect Master. She likes obedient children the most." Yuanqi. The sound of her enchanting voice sank into Yuanqi's bones and caused him to suddenly feel a kind of soreness as an intense numbness spread out from his heart and across his whole body. The jade finger had only gently poked him in the chest, yet he felt as if his blood had suddenly been aroused. A feeling of heat followed his boiling blood and quickly spread across his entire body. This sudden loss of control caused Yuanqi to become terrified, as, in the short moment of a breath, he resisted the urge to fiercely throw the woman in front of him onto the ground and ravage her dozens of times to his heart's content. "Master, I've returned." Mu Xiaolan's joyous voice resonated in from outside, causing Yuanqi to quickly wake up from his daze. Mu Xiaolan seemed to be in high spirits as she pretty much skipped into the main hall. Upon seeing Yuanqi and the half-concealed female figure standing extremely close to him, she couldn't help but directly ask, which senior or senior sister is visiting?" But before Mu Xiaolan could even completely finish saying what she was about to say, her entire figure suddenly stiffened and stopped in place. Her ice-like pupils contracted as if pricked by needles. Thud. Mu Xiaolan fell heavily to her knees and bowed, her pretty head falling towards the ground as her whole body shriveled and began to quiver. "SSSS Sect Master?" Yuanqi coincidentally had just turned around at this time. Thus, an inexplicable expression appeared on his face as he looked at Mu Xiaolan and asked, "What Sect Master? Have you lost your mind?" Then Yuanqi's voice suddenly died as he went cold and abruptly turned around. Before him was still the seductive woman and her hand which was still gently poking his chest. However, her aura had changed. It had completely changed. Her deadly seductiveness had disappeared. It had completely disappeared, and in its place was an overbearing feeling of power which caused Yuanqi's soul to feel as if it had been buried by a mountain tens of thousands of meters tall. The formerly slightly curved eyes had become narrowed and straight, presenting a majesty which caused others to unconsciously tremble with fear. The charming gaze had transformed into an icy glare which could freeze one's soul with but a glance. The jade finger on his chest was no longer transferring over a flow of heat, which caused his blood to boil but an icy coldness, as if he had fallen into a cave of ice, instantly causing his boiling blood to freeze as it quickly spread through his body. Yuanqi's mouth opened and then opened again. His eyes wildly fluttered, but not a word came out from within his mouth, as though something had was stuck in his throat. This unparalleled, terrifying pressure was one that he had just personally experienced earlier today. It was none other than the pressure which was unique to the Snow Song Realm King. The finger slowly moved away from Yuanqi's chest, as Mu Xuanian's figure slowly moved past Yuanqi's still body with dignified steps. "Don't forget the words that this king imparted to you." This voice was completely devoid of the gentleness and coquettishness of earlier, and was instead as cold as the frigid Arctic wind. Each word was filled with power and majesty. I bid Sect Master farewell." The snowy figure slightly blurred and instantly moved hundreds of meters. Mu Xiaolan was still trembling and remained bowed until a long while after the Sect Master had left, before carefully rising from the ground. However, the color on her small face never returned. It was clear that she had been greatly frightened. "Ooh," Mu Xiaolan whimpered in fear. "For Sect Master to actually have been here, it scared me to death. Just now I was almost disrespectful towards her. Yuanqi, did Sect Master come here specifically to see you?" The entire time Mu Xiaolan spoke, Yuanqi, whose back was facing her, remained still like a wooden stake. Mu Xiaolan walked to Yuanqi's front in 3 small steps and discovered that his expression was one of extreme panic and terror. "Ah, Yuanqi, what's wrong?" Quite frightened by Yuanqi's current appearance, Mu Xiaolan quickly waved her hand in front of his face. Hey. Yuanqi slowly raised his hand. His movement stiff as he used his hand to slowly push up his chin and close his mouth, which had fallen wide open. With a crack, his mouth, which had been open for so long, finally closed, except it was slightly off-center. His other hand also slowly rose and pressed on the left side of his face. Another crack resounded in the hall as his face returned to normal. Why you couldn't have gotten scared silly by the Sect Master, right?" Mu Xiaolan nervously asked. "Phew," Yuanqi slowly exhaled and then quietly asked, "The Sect Master, what is her real name?" This." Mu Xiaolan got a little closer to Yuanqi, then said in an extremely quiet voice, "Sect Master's real name is Mu Xuanian. However, even if you are Sect Master's direct disciple, you must not call her by her real name. It is extremely disrespectful." Yuanqi, at number percent, and you, why didn't you say it earlier? Yuanqi glared resentfully at Mu Xiaolan. "You never asked me, though." Mu Xiaolan innocently blinked as some confusion emerged in her eyes. "Yuanqi, are you all right?" Mu Xiaolan timidly asked in worry. She had never before seen Yuanqi in such a state. Today in the heavenly Netherfrost Lake, he had even dared to talk back to the Sect Master, yet currently he seemed to have been scared silly. "Do I look like I'm all right?" Yuanqi used his hand to cover his face, his heart a mess as he murmured, "The fact that I'm still alive right now really is a complete miracle." Finished speaking, his body suddenly swayed as he directly fell toward Mu Xiaolan. "Ah," Mu Xiaolan slightly whimpered as she subconsciously moved forward and propped Yuanqi up. As a result, however, she felt her entire body go numb as if it had been shocked by electricity. After a short moment of stiffness, she let out a long scream. "Ah!" This was because Yuanqi's head had directly fallen onto her bosom and was squishing it. Mu Xiaolan's hurriedly withdrew as her face and neck became a flushed red. You did that on purpose." Afterwards, she stomped fiercely on the ground before flusteredly running away without bothering to look back again at Yuanqi. Yuanqi sat on the ground for a long while and silently contemplated his existence. That woman, Sect Master, Snow Song Realm King? Just what exactly? How could they both be the same person? How? But just now, when he turned back around, the coquettish woman had indeed turned into the Snow Song Realm King. And during this process, her finger had never left his chest, completely getting rid of the possibility of a twin. Thinking back over the voices of the two people, they did indeed sound quite similar, however. One spoke so delicately and softly while the other spoke so dignifiedly and intimidatingly. One's voice melted into the bones, while the other's voice was so cold it tore at the heart. No matter how much one thought about it, it was impossible to associate both to one person. No matter how much one thought about it, it was impossible for the two voices to belong to one person. The key was, if she was indeed the Snow Song Realm King, who killed everything within thousands of meters when angered, then based on what he had said to her, how was he still alive? And how had he become her direct disciple? And why would the Snow Song Realm King have personally come several days earlier to give him and Mu-Xial and the amorous Frost due? Wait. That day she came to give the amorous Frost due, she said she had come to see a person. Could it be that the person she wanted to see was FCK? Yuanqi slapped himself on his forehead with his palm as he finally figured it all out. That day, the person Mu Xiunian had personally come to see was none other than himself. It was probably because Mu Bingyun had become aware of the extreme abnormalities on his body at that time. Thus, she had completely spilled everything to Mu Xiunian, the Snow Song Realm King. Thus, at that time, the Snow Song Realm King should have learned about everything and faintly guessed that Yuanqi's body might contain the legacy of the ancient evil god. That was why she had personally come to see him. And the reason Mu-Xiaolan didn't know about what had happened that day was because Mu Xiunian had isolated the cultivation room Mu-Xiaolan was in. With her strength, it was quite easy for her. My masters, each one is even more terrifying than the previous one. Yuanqi quietly sighed as memories of his first meetings with Jasmine emerged in his mind. During that time, almost everything Jasmine had said to him was filled with scorn and expressed her loathing for him while also berating him. After all, with the peak that she had once been at, forget about the useless him at that time. Even the most powerful practitioners on the profound sky continent were nothing more than insignificant bugs in her eyes. She had only attached herself to him and accepted him as a disciple because she herself was forced to by her own helplessness at the time. At this moment, as he recalled those memories of such a humiliating period of time, it was like he had fallen into a beautiful dream. Jasmine, I will definitely meet you again. 7 days later, Ice Phoenix Realm's Sacred Hall. The Sacred Hall was located at the extreme north of the Ice Phoenix Realm and was the closest place to the heavenly Netherfrost Lake in terms of distance. It was also the place where the sect master resided and was the most sacred place within the entire Ice Phoenix Realm, if not the entire Snow Song Realm. Unless one was summoned, no one dared to go anywhere near it. But today was Divine Ice Phoenix Sect's great sect assembly, a gathering rarely seen once even in 1,000 years. And for such a grand event, which brought the entire sect together, it only had one extremely simple reason: the discipleship ceremony of the sect master's direct disciple. It was still early in the morning, but the giant courtyard in front of the palace was already completely covered with tens of millions of disciples, elders, palace masters, vice palace masters, deacons, etc. Even the greater half of the hall masters had come. However, while the crowd was huge, it was extremely silent enough to hear a needle dropping.